It was early in the morning again, and all the high-ranking wolves in the pack slowly filled up the hall. I and the other maids ran about, serving the guests with as much hospitality and efficiency as we could muster. Today, my mother Luna was caught up with greeting all the guests that had arrived, meaning that for the entire day, or at least until the party was over, I was free from verbal assaults. I moved from table to table with a forced smile, serving food and drinks to the beta wolves present for the ceremony. From exasperating old men and women to the most disrespectful little brats, I was drained to the bone even before the day began. I walked back to the kitchen to get some more food, dragging my feet on the ground as I groaned in pain. As I opened the door to the kitchen, I felt a strange presence in the area. It was that of an Omega, someone I couldn't recognize. I thought for a moment if it was someone from the pack who sneaked in, but I realized that the heavy security mounted at all the entrances was impenetrable. I slowly pushed the kitchen door further open and stepped in as quietly as I could. "You maids are really good at cooking, aren't you?" A male's voice sounded from inside the kitchen, specifically from the area where the food was kept. I rushed into the kitchen and instinctively swung my tray at him, hoping to land a good hit. He casually moved to the side as if sensing my attack, and I fell to the ground, face flat. "You should watch your step. You don't want to be losing a tooth on a special day such as this one." He said this as he threw a piece of meat into his mouth. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" I asked as I struggled to get back on my feet. "My name is Steven, and I'm here to get some food. There's such a huge selection, I don't know what to pick," he said, staring at the different bowls that rested on the kitchen counter. "Only the maids are allowed in here. Omegas aren't allowed in the party, so go find food elsewhere," I queried, pointing at the kitchen's exit. Okay. "I'll leave if you give me some more meat and stew to head home with," he said with a warm smile. He had dark blue marble eyes and black silky hair. He wore a black leather jacket and black leather pants. As I got more and more absorbed into his features, emotions I never knew existed started to well up inside me. "No, I can't let you have any of these. I would get in serious trouble. Please, you have to leave now," I replied, turning away from him. I couldn't let myself be absorbed by his charms. As I stared at the ground continuously, tightly gripping my tray, I didn't realize when he slipped past me with one of the bowls in his hand. Later, his voice sounded loudly from behind me. I turned around as quickly as I could, and to my surprise he was already through the door. "Hey!" I exclaimed as I rushed after him with my tray. My arm and legs, which were extremely exhausted before, suddenly burst with energy as I ran after him through the passages. After a while, I started to wonder how he knew the building so well. No outsider was allowed to come close to the Alpha building, so no one but the servants and family members knew their way around the building. As I stretched my right arm forward to grab his jacket, I heard my mother's voice coming from the next corner in the passage. We both stopped running and panicked for a moment. As my mother got closer and closer, I grabbed him by his jacket's collar, opened a door beside us, and pulled him in. As I shut the door again, he said, breathing heavily, "It's pretty tight in here, isn't it?" "Shut up. If my mother finds out I'm out here slacking off with some freeloaders, that would be the end of me, so be quiet and stay still," I replied. The room we were now in was an extremely tight space where cleaning tools were kept. Both bodies were tightly pressed against each other, and I could feel his warm breath gently glide over my nose. Our gazes locked onto each other, and neither of us could look away. Not because of the tight space, but because we both didn't want to ruin the moment. As I stared at him, the glow in my eyes I had lost over the years, and the happiness in my heart I thought was gone all returned in an instant. And for the first time in forever, a genuine smile grew on my face. Suddenly, my mother's presence was gone. I quickly broke the eye contact we had and cleared my throat. I reached for the door behind him and pushed it open. Not realizing the door was already open, he attempted to rest on it and fell to the ground, the bowl of hot stew scattering over his face. "Ah! It burns," he yelled, and I quickly rushed to help him up, urging him to remain quiet. I helped him back to the kitchen and washed off the stew from his face and body. Luckily, there were no bruises or burns on him. I stealthily guided him out of the house as fast as I could, making sure not even the servants saw him. After moving around for a few minutes, we burst out of the exit of a secret passageway in the building. He said goodbye to me with the most charming smile. And as I stood there waving him goodbye, the only thoughts I had in my head were, I found him, my mate. The party lasted the whole day, and by the evening, my entire being was now nothing but an empty shell. Although the fact that I had met my mate today was something that kept a smile on my face throughout, I was sure my mother noticed it. My first genuine smile in years. I sat quietly on one of the chairs in the hall, after a long evening of cleaning up the mess the guests had made. Her footsteps sounded behind me. I quickly got up from the seat and turned around to face her. Luna, I said, slightly inclining my torso in a bow. She walked toward me, saying without a moment to spare, "You should start preparing to depart. The warrior wolves from the Dark Moon pack will be coming to pick you up in 2 days, she said. Yes, Luna, I replied, as the joy I had in my heart completely drained out. What exactly was the point of finding my mate now that I was going to get married to someone else? The glow in my eyes faded away again, and I could see my mother's lip curving up into a smirk. Finish with whatever you are doing here and go pack your bags. I'll get you a proper dress and a new pair of shoes so you will look presentable to the Alphaking, my mother said, then happily walked out, her every step echoing loudly in the hall. I stared at her blankly, watching as she went through the exit. My fist tightened in anger, but my face remained expressionless. I let out a sigh, then turned to the ground saying, I am going to escape. After my day's chores, I retired to my quarters. I fell on my bed weightlessly and stared at the ceiling, thinking of ways I would leave the house without being seen. Then, it hit me. The passage I used to help Stephen escape was perfect. I was going to finally run away with the man of my dreams and never come back, even if it meant becoming a rogue. Firstly, I had to write to him. I didn't want to go through the hassle of looking all over for him. I needed to somehow reach him and tell him to meet me at the end of the tunnel. I got off my bed quickly, picked up a pen and a piece of paper and started writing. Writing the letter took only 5 minutes. There was no way of getting the letter to him, so I just had to leave the letter at the end of the tunnel, hoping that the moon goddess would come back before my departure. That same night, I left my room and quietly rushed to the tunnel's entrance. Everyone except the night wolves were sound asleep, so I had to move around as stealthily as possible until I got to the entrance. As I got to the entrance, I took off all the clothes I wore and shifted into my wolf so I could see clearly in the dark. I ran through the tunnel as fast as I could, and in no time, got to the other side. I gently placed the letter on the ground, and my mission was complete. Now I just had to wait and see if he would come back here again. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my alarm, this time feeling a little more energized than before. And to my own surprise, I had a smile on my face. I had a feeling today was going to be a good day. I walked out of my room after dressing up and met all the maidens waiting for me at my door, each with a basket filled with clothes. What is all this? I asked, a perplexed look crawling onto my face. We've been sent by Luna to help you pick a dress for your departure the day after tomorrow, they said in unison. A smile grew on my face. At least Stephen would see me in a beautiful dress, and not the rags I usually wore. I let out a sigh and said, Come in, let's get started. Dressing me up took a few more hours than I expected. They sewed, stitched, and mended until the dress was as beautiful as a rose. In fact, the dress was made to look like one. It had petals that reached up to my upper chest and petals that fell down to my feet. The red color felt so natural and free, although I would have preferred black. The dress also came with transparent silk gloves that reached all the way to my upper arms. "You are so beautiful," one of the maidens said as she placed a rose above my left ear. I smiled. I hope he likes it too, I thought to myself. After all the dressing up, we all returned to our daily chores. Me and my two trusted friends stuck together the whole day, cleaning and serving the family with whatever they needed. For some reason, my mother was a lot nicer to me today, probably because she didn't want me to think about running away. As night came, I told Marion and Lily about my escape and about my mate. They both decided to help me get ready for the night I would leave my pack for good. That night, I went to the tunnels again and ran to their exit. There I met the envelope I dropped, and my heart sank in disappointment. I picked the envelope up as a sad expression grew on my face and turned it over. To my surprise, there was a new seal at the front. I broke open the seal and took out the letter inside the envelope, and to my utmost relief, it was a different letter. He replied. I thought to myself, holding the envelope tightly to my chest. Tawati. The next night, I got ready for my departure. Marion and Lily stayed in my room to get me ready. They helped me put on my dress and helped with my makeup. They also escorted me to the entrance of the tunnel, and I bid them goodbye. This time, I couldn't transform into my wolf because I didn't want to ruin my makeup and dress. I walked carefully through the dark tunnel with a flame torch, braving through with thoughts of a happy future with my mate. I could feel my freedom waiting for me at the end of the tunnel. And every dream I ever had was coming true. You really think you are smart, aren't you? Her demonic voice sounded, shattering my hopes into a million pieces. I slowly turned around with a shocked expression on my face. El Luna, I said it with shaking in my voice. So, you found your mate, and were planning to run away with him. I thought there was something wrong when I saw your happy face after the ceremony, my mother said as she walked toward me. How did you know? I asked as I stepped back. I found this, she replied, pulling out my letter and throwing it to the ground. You are going to marry the Alphaking of the Darkmoon Pack. And that is final, she continued. No, I am never going back. I yelled angrily as I turned around to run away. I suddenly bumped into my younger brother's chest. He held me tightly by my arms and a smile grew on his face. Why are you being such a selfish big sister? Do you want the Darkmoon Pack to go to war with us? He said, throwing me to the ground. Please. I just wanted a good life. I am tired of this place, I said, as tears filled my eyes. Oh dear, this is your home. Well, not anymore since you'll be going to the Darkmoon Pack soon, my mother said, leaning forward to mock me. Take her away, she ordered. 4 warrior wolves marched out of the darkness and dragged me by my arms back to where I came from. And in just a flash, the flicker of hope I had was gone and my life was over. The next morning, I was out in a carrier with all my luggage. My face was blank again, and my eyes were filled to the brim with nothing but sorrow. The carrier, which was being controlled by a Darkmoon warrior wolf, began our journey to the pack I would spend the rest of my life with. 2 warrior wolves sat on both my sides, and none of them said a word to me through the entire journey. After a long ride, we finally arrived at Darkmoon territory. The entire place was covered in gray fog, and I could sense multiple wolves lurking in the shadows, possibly for security reasons. We drove through the pack and finally arrived at the gates of the Alpha's home. I got down from the carrier with the other warrior wolves, and they helped me carry my bags into the mansion. The ambiance of the place gave me a bad feeling in my stomach. I could sense multiple ominous auras lurking around the mansion. The darkness that dwelled here was unimaginable. I walked through the gardens, staring blankly at the ground. A voice sounded, "Welcome." I slowly raised my head, and my eyes widened as I heard his voice. Our eyes met, and my heart skipped a beat. Tears filled my eyes as I said softly, "Stephen." As I stared at him, my heart beating even more rapidly than it ever did whenever I stood before my mother. Tears gathered in my eyes. I tried my best to hold back the sadness, but my efforts were futile. Staring at him filled me with mixed emotions of happiness, anger, and grief. Until this moment, I thought my life was over. I thought my mate would be here, waiting for me. I rushed toward him, asking with excitement as I grabbed his hand, "Where have you been? I thought you would return to my father's mansion, but you never came. Is this your pack?" Stephen stared at me with a piercing gaze, his eyes suddenly filling with contempt. I could feel a dark aura surrounding him, one I never noticed the first time we met. Something about him was different. Something I couldn't put a finger on. The Omega aura I sensed around him at the peacekeeping ceremony was completely gone. And something a lot more powerful and ominous filled the air. "Unhand me, woman," he said in a grim tone, throwing me aside. "Take your bags and head to your quarters. You shall be among the serving maids. Gregory here will explain your duties to you," he continued, turning around and walking away. "Maids?" I asked whoever cared to listen softly, sitting on the ground where he remorselessly left me. One of the warrior wolves who accompanied me here walked to me and gently helped me off the ground as I stared at the entrance to the mansion with confusion edged on my face. "Please don't mind the Alpha. He can be a little difficult at times, but I'm sure you'll love him once you get to know him," he said. His name was Gregory, and he was a beta to the Alpha of the pack. I knew this because he had already introduced himself to me before we left Montgomery's mansion. "He's the Alpha?" I asked, even more confused now. "Yes, he is Stephen Mortimer, Alpha of the Dark Moon Pack." "Have you two met before? Because it was a little too bold of you to launch at him like that," Gregory asked. I stared at him for a moment, then turned back to the mansion's entrance, saying softly, No, we haven't." Gregory helped me carry my bags into the mansion and led me to my room upstairs. This mansion was far larger than the one I used to stay in, and the area where the maid rooms were lined up was far more beautiful than anything I ever expected. Each room had a small chandelier, its own bathroom, and a bed for each servant. Judging from the outside of the mansion, one would think this place was an abandoned house, haunted by ghosts. But from within, it was a world separate from what I once knew. This place was like a heaven for anyone who attained the Alpha's favor, and a hell for anyone who dared to cross him. Gregory guided me to my room. He gently placed the bags on the ground and told me that there were maidens inside who would show me around the mansions. After giving me a few instructions, he waved at me and walked back in the direction we had come. I let out a sigh, then whispered to myself, "Okay, the good thing is that I'm no longer with the Darkhound pack. Let's just focus on that." I picked up my bag and placed my palm on the door to gently push it open when one of the maidens on the inside suddenly pulled on it, yelling with a bright smile, "Welcome, how was your trip? I hope you guys weren't ambushed." I skipped back in shock and asked with surprise on my face, "Ambushed? Yes. These territories are filled with all sorts of rogue wolves that keep making trouble from time to time. But the Alpha and his warrior wolves are in charge of handling that stuff," she answered. "Don't listen to her if you don't want to have nightmares." Another female voice sounded from inside the room. Her voice was a lot firmer and more mature than that of the one who stood before me. I picked up both my bags and walked into the room, carrying a nervous look on my face. As I walked in, I saw two other she-wolves. one dressed completely in a black sleeping gown and the other dressed in red. The one who wore red sat before a mirror, gently brushing her dark brown locks, and the one in black laid on her bed, staring at the chandelier that hung from the ceiling. Clarabelle has a habit of scaring newcomers. She's quite the prankster, you see. The lady who sat before the mirror spoke, then turned around. Her scarlet-red eyes glittered in the orange hue of the chandelier light, and her lips sparkled like twinkling stars in the night sky. She was the most beautiful lady in the room, and from the sound of her voice and the way she spoke, I could tell she was the eldest, or at least the most mature. "Welcome, dear. My name is Christine," she said. She got up from her seat and walked toward me. As she got in front of me, she took my hand and gently shook it. Thanks," I finally responded with a smile. "Wait, what did you mean by newcomers?" "I was told I was being given to the Alpha as a bride," I asked as Christine walked away from me. She suddenly stopped and turned around, saying as she let out a soft giggle, "Well, dear, we were all told the same thing, but here we are serving away the rest of our lives as the Alpha's maids." "Oh," I said softly, as a look of disappointment crawled onto my face. "Don't feel disappointed. Life here is pretty interesting if you open your heart to it," Christine said, as she sat back down in front of her mirror. "Yeah. Just don't get on the Alpha's bad side." The female who laid on her bed finally spoke. I turned to her and she said, "My name's Marie," she continued, using her left index and middle fingers to make a peace sign. She also had dark brown hair and a black cloth around her eyes. As I stared at the mysterious cloth tied around her eyes, she suddenly spoke as if sensing my intense gaze. "I'm blind, if that's what you're wondering. And before you ask, I use my sense of smell and hearing to move around and work in the mansion." "Oh, okay," I replied, and walked toward my bed. After arranging my bags where they were supposed to be, I fell on my bed and let out a long sigh of exhaustion. I stared at the ceiling, moving my eyes around, until it fell on a candle sitting on the chandelier. I think the person I was sold to was my mate. He was different, though. The cheerful and carefree attitude he had when I met him was no longer there. It was like this was a completely different person, and my mate was still out there, waiting for me. At this point, there was only one way to confirm the mate bond. I sat silently in one of the many living rooms in the mansion. My legs crossed and my arms folded against my chest. I had a blank expression on my face, moving my eyes to the side frequently to check the time on the ticking pendulum clock that rested on a wall a little distance from my right. The room I was in had a dark brown ambiance and dark brown curtains with golden rose patterns hung over the windows and doors that led outside the living room. Today was a very important day. Today a meeting would be held between me and the council members on the matters of uniting all the packs and reigning over them as the only Alpha. This was my goal ever since I was born. While all the other kids made friends and had dreams of being united with their mate, I spent days and nights plotting, looking for a way to merge the packs. After a few minutes of waiting, I heard clicking sounds coming toward one of the entrances. Soon after, the door opened and Gregory stepped in. "Alpha Stephen, they have arrived. They await you in the dining hall," he said, inclining his torso in simple bow. I waved my right hand at him, signifying that I was on my way, and he turned around and walked out of the room. I got up from the couch I sat on and pulled on the collars of my suit to straighten it, then walked toward the door Gregory used. After a few minutes, I arrived in the dining hall. All the members of the council were present, including the head, Lady Anaya. She wore a large white hat and had a small transparent silk cloth hanging over her face. She had white translucent gloves on and a white dress with a lower half that looked like a large rose. "Finally, you decide to grace us with your presence," one of the members said, turning in my direction. They all wore white clothes, each carrying a golden badge that signified their level of status in the council. "I'm deeply sorry for making you wait. Shall we begin?" I replied, as Gregory pulled out my seat. This meeting is solely on the topic of you wanting to merge all the packs. We as the council think the idea is marvelous as it would promote peace and unity in werewolf society. But do you realize that convincing the other alphas to give up their positions will be quite the hassle? Lady Anaya spoke. The room remained quiet for a moment. I cleared my throat and answered, "Well, my lady, I plan on sending letters to each of the alphas, proposing they become cabinet members under my rulership. Together we will make the world a peaceful place for werewolf kind. My only quandary is that they may fail to see reason and would most likely fight against me. This is where I would like you to step in. You can help me convince them into acknowledging that I am more than capable of ruling over them. I would hate a situation where I would have to resort to war to achieve my goals. And if they refuse to listen to us?" Lady Anaya asked. "Well, I think we all already know the answer to that," I replied, placing my back on my seat's backrest. "Very well, Alpha Stephen. We as the Council of Packs frankly agree with your idea and will try our very best to see that it comes to pass." Lady Anaya said with a smile. "Thank you very much," I replied, smiling back at her. "And if you try to start a war with one of the packs that refuse your proposal, isn't the council obligated to intervene?" Gregory asked, both of us walking down a hallway toward my room. "No, they aren't, Gregory. Warfare is only a normality in the werewolf world. It is how we claim dominance over one another and maintain our position at the top, leaving the weak at the bottom where they'd rot and die. Besides, my idea of merging the packs is aimed at changing that. I plan to stop warfare completely. Any alpha who goes against it is an enemy of peace and progress in the world of wolves," I replied. "I guess that's correct, Alpha Stephen," Gregory agreed, his lips curving into a smile. We both remained silent for the rest of the walk, and as we got in front of my room, Gregory asked, "It felt a bit strange that the newcomer was bold enough to go at you like that, didn't it?" I turned around to face him. "What newcomer?" I asked. "The girl who I recently accompanied here from the Montgomery's mansion at the Darkhound Pack. Gabriella," he said. "Oh, her. She probably must have mistaken me for someone else," I answered, then continued. "You really have to do a better job of teaching these young girls their place in this mansion, or have you gone soft because you have some sort of romantic feelings toward her?" "Never, my lord. I have sworn to stand by your side and serve you till the day I perish," Gregory said. I stared at him for a moment, then let out a sigh. "You know I'm not stopping you from leaving. Once you find your mate, right?" I asked. "Well, sire." He was about to speak when I suddenly shut the door to my room. I gently placed my back on the wooden surface and let out another sigh. As I shut my eyes, strange images began filling my head. I could feel someone's cold breath softly brushing over my throat. From the way the person breathed, I could tell it was a female. Her black marble eyes sparkled in the dark, tight room. As she stared at me without uttering a word, my eyes opened again and I was back in my room. As I stared at my window with a confused expression on my face, I asked myself, whose memories are these? Who was she? The Darkhound Pack has already signed the agreement and is already under my control. I'll have them help spread the message to all the other packs, I said, scribbling my signature onto a letter I was going to send to Montgomery's mansion. "But why don't we spread the message ourselves?" Gregory asked, looking a little troubled. "The message will be from an unknown sender, proposing the deal to the alphas and asking those who agree to meet at an undisclosed location. The alphas who refuse to comply might get violent and want to attack the only pack they think the message is coming from. If they lay siege on the Darkfang pack, I can use the opportunity to assess them and know exactly what I'm up against." I replied with a cold stare, "But, sire, innocent lives will be lost. The Darkhound pack will be destroyed if they are attacked by more than one opposing pack at the same time, Gregory argued. I let out a sigh, got up from where I sat, and walked toward a window in the dimly lit room we were in. This is a game of war, Gregory. We are not bothered by what side is good or evil. We are not bothered about the means we employ to win. The only thing that matters is who comes out on top. I never said you were evil, Gregory said softly, turning to the ground. I remained silent for a moment, then said, No, you didn't. I turned back to him and continued, Get this message to the Darkhound pack. We shouldn't waste any more time than we already have. Yes, sire, Gregory replied and quietly exited the room. I turned away from the door after Gregory had shut it. I let out a sigh, staring through the window at the large fence that surrounded the mansion. This fence marked the end of the mansion and the beginning of the most treacherous part of my pack. Those images suddenly came to mind again. Flashes of a blurry face and a female voice I couldn't recognize. I clenched my teeth tightly and gently pressed both my palms against both sides of my head as a headache slowly came up. After a while, I left the room and headed for the gates, wearing a large black jacket with a hood that covered my head. As I walked through the gardens surrounding the mansion, I stumbled upon someone. She was holding a tray and her hair seemed a little messy. She stood there staring at me like we had met before. And after a few seconds, she snapped out of her mental stillness, saying, My lord, good morning. I stared at her for a moment, then realized she was the girl Gregory had brought in recently, Gabriella. Her presence made me feel uneasy. I hadn't met her anywhere before, but somehow she seemed familiar. Her scent, her eyes, and the way she spoke somehow weren't new to me. I stared at her a little longer, then walked past her without saying a word in return. I could feel her intense glare as I walked away. I wondered what was going through her mind as she stared. After a few minutes of walking, I finally arrived in front of the gate. I had never left the mansion before because I was warned never to. Father and Mother always told me there was something out there, something dangerous, something I could never face, no matter how powerful I was. And it wasn't a lie. Before my father died, I had an undying urge to see what was beyond the mansion, the so-called danger my parents always protected me from. But every time I got in front of the gate, an ominous and intense presence filled my entire body with fear. It was like something evil surrounded the mansion. Each time I peeped through the gap between the two metal doors, there was always someone standing there, a female with a smile on her face. She always had a large hat on, so her eyes were covered and she was surrounded completely by nothing but darkness. The worst part was that only my parents and I could see her. Everyone else freely went in and out of the mansion, but we could never. I peeked through the gap again, and there she was, smiling so innocently, but with the aura of a demon surrounding her. I gulped in some saliva and gently pushed the gates open. I walked out of the mansion and into the outside world. Oh, welcome back, Alpha Steven. You successfully faced your fears again, the little girl said. She had bright green eyes and dark brown hair. She was only half my height, and her hat looked like that of a witch. Faced my fears again? Alpha, what was she talking about? Whoa. I feel so exhausted. I slept for quite a long time, didn't I? I asked with a smile, stretching my limbs. Just 3 days. Nothing unusual, she replied as she walked to my side. Her name was Margaret, and she was only 10 years old. So, where are we heading today? I asked, and she replied with a short giggle. Anywhere you want, Alpha Steven. You always call me Alpha Steven. Why? And why do I always wake up at the gates of the Alpha's mansion? You'll get me in trouble with the Alpha of the pack, I queried as I picked the little girl up and placed her on my shoulder. You'll understand one day, Steven. For now, let's go have some fun, the little girl replied with another giggle. How about the girl I met at Montgomery's mansion? I hope she didn't get in trouble because of me, I said as a worried expression grew on my face. Don't worry, she is all right. In fact, she is really far away from Montgomery's mansion and has new friends to keep her company now. So, she is okay, Margaret replied. I wish I'd get to see her again, though. She seemed really nice, I said. She giggled again, then said, Sure you will sooner than you expect. As my eyes met with Stephen's for the second time since I came to the mansion, I felt nothing but admiration and love for the man that stood before me. He had the same expression as the day I arrived. He seemed nothing like Stephen from Montgomery's mansion. But for some reason, I felt like they were the same person. But why didn't he recognize me? I had lost all focus on my surroundings, and even on my own body as I fell deeper and deeper into his intense gaze. His brows suddenly furrowed, and that sudden movement snapped me out of my reverie. I immediately bowed and greeted him politely, but he completely ignored me, walking past me without uttering a single word. I turned to stare at him as he walked away, wondering where he was heading. I stealthily followed behind him, moving from rosebush to rosebush, trying to avoid his eyes. After a few minutes, he arrived at the gates of the mansion. He stood in front of the gate for a few minutes, and I could see his face contouring with fear. What could possibly be on the other side? I thought to myself, then wondered why he hadn't caught my attention yet. Maybe he was too focused on whatever he was doing in front of the gates. He gently placed his palm on the gate and pushed it open, then walked out slowly. As he got to the other side, the gate slowly sprung to a close. Through the gap that slowly narrowed, I could see the figure of a child standing before the Alpha. As I stared at the child, she suddenly inclined her head to the left and smiled at me. Her face was shadow black, and her eyes were green as apples. The gap between her lips, as she smiled, glowed red, and her entire body was enveloped in a demonic aura. The gates finally shut, and the resulting metallic thud sent a sudden shock through my chest. I immediately turned around and headed into the mansion, wondering what the moon goddess's name was. Never in my life had I seen something so terrifying. What was it doing in front of the mansion, though? And what was it doing with Stephen? Anyone else would have minded their business and walked away from the memory of ever witnessing it. But for some reason, I wanted to know more. I walked back into the mansion with my tray, heading to meet the other girls, when I came across someone I had never met before. A female who was dressed like one of the warrior wolves. She had dark orange hair and bright brown eyes. She had a serious look on her face and stood in one position like a statue. As I walked past her, I waved, saying, "Hi." She didn't say anything in reply. Her eyes were locked on the mansion's front door, and it seemed nothing could distract her. I waited for a few seconds to see if she would at least turn in my direction, but it was to no avail. I let out a sigh and walked away, thinking about how weird and strange everyone in this mansion was. I finally arrived in my room and found the other girls waiting for me, ready for the next phase of the preparation of the ceremony. They had explained to me that there were a total of 3 phases. The first phase was a large cookout in the big house, and the next phase after that was a hunt in the forest. I can see you guys are ready, I said with a smile, assessing the garments they wore. Each of them wore simple clothing that wouldn't tear apart during shifting and avoided using underwear. You should out on something different too. You'll ruin these clothes if you wear them during hunting, Christine said. Are all the other maids going to hunt too? I asked as I walked to a closet where I hung my clothes. No. Just like the big house, only a select few are allowed to go hunting. We are given a specific time limit, and when the bell rings, we all return to the mansion, or will be locked out and made rogues, Marie replied, pulling the ends of her blindfold to loosen it. As she took off her blindfold, I stared continuously in anticipation, waiting to see what Marie's face truly looked like. She pulled the blindfold off and her hair fell above her eyes and covered it again. My brows furrowed and my lips tightened in disappointment. I couldn't ask her to show me her eyes because it would be disrespectful. So I had to let it go. You want to see my eyes, don't you? Marie said, turning to me. I raised my head in response and she continued. I don't think you are ready for that yet. She turned around and tied the rest of her hair in a bun. She had a blank expression on her face. It was at this moment that I realized I had never seen Marie smile since the day we met. Let's hurry and leave before it is too late, Christine said as she walked toward the door. She placed her right palm on its handle and pulled it open, and all three of us walked out of the room. We went through a series of passageways until we finally got to a door that led directly to the woods. You'd think there'd be a lot more maids around the door, I said as the four of us stood in front of the large wooden door. What are we waiting for? I asked. Christine turned around and made a shushing sound, then said, Listen and smell. I focused my senses on hearing, listening to the wind that blew by and the leaves that rustled and crunched under the footsteps of my fellow wolves in the forest. I keened my sense of smell and could not only perceive the blood of game caught by the wolves, but also the blood of the wolves themselves. Are they fighting? I asked as my heart rate grew faster. Christine let out a sigh. Gabriella, in this pack you have to prove your worth. You have to prove you can contribute greatly to the safety of the people in this mansion. And this is what the hunt is for. Wolves you once thought were your friends will turn on you, just so they can be on top, because the weak ones will be left for dead at the end of the hunt. So brace yourself. It is going to be wild. She turned back to the door, slowly pushed it open, and said softly as we walked out, You've heard, smelled now. See, the silence in the air was unbearable. I could hear my own breathing, and with every step, I took crushed dried leaves under my paws, making sounds that echoed through the forest as if informing the other wolves of my location. I moved steadily. My eyes focused on the prey before me, a large dark brown deer. As I got in close range, I leaped toward it, but before I could reach it, it jumped out of the way and took off. I landed headfirst on a rock and yelled in pain. Hunting is so hard. How am I supposed to survive this? I thought to myself, using my paw to gently rub my head. The other girls are gone. There is no way of finding them now, and the bell is going to ring any time soon. What to do? What to do? I said this as I sat there with a worried look. It had already been the first hour. I had never gone hunting before in my life, and my wolf wasn't fast or strong enough to run from other wolves. I let out a sigh, got up from where I sat, and walked through the bushes in my continued search for a simpler prey, something that wouldn't easily jump out of the way. Christine said the forest was bustling with wildlife this time of the year, but all I could see for miles were just bushes and trees. Maybe I was in the wrong part of the forest. As I fell deeper and deeper into my thoughts, I noticed a large rabbit across a small bush a little distance from me. Rabbits. They're really fast, but maybe I could, I said silently as I crouched down, readying all four of my feet to pounce on the rabbit. I waited a few seconds for the right moment, and when it finally came, I pushed myself off the ground. And in an instant, the rabbit's upper body was between my jaws. I bit harder into its torso, holding it to the ground to make sure it didn't have the chance to run away. And after a few minutes it stopped moving. I let go of the rabbit and sat by it, waiting to see if it would move. But it was dead. I did it. It is only a rabbit, but I finally caught something. I won't have to go back empty-handed, I said, letting out slow breaths as I was heavily tired from moving around so much. As I leaned forward to pick up the rabbit, I felt a heavy blow on my side. I was sent flying into a large tree that stood a short distance from me, and after hitting it, I fell to the ground with a subtle thud. The pain I felt as I slowly rose from the ground was unbearable. I opened my eyes and turned to see a larger wolf walking toward me. I couldn't tell who among the maids this was, but I knew things were about to get ugly. She slowly closed in on me, growling loudly, every one of her fangs exposed to incite fear. I stepped back. There was nothing I could do at this point. She was larger and stronger than I was. All my senses went stiff as they recognized she was about to attack, and my legs petrified with fear as my fur bristled. She launched at me, spreading her large mouth with killing intent. Suddenly, another large wolf leaped out of nowhere and pushed her in another direction. She got up from the ground and was about to attack the intruder. But she noticed something strange about him. I couldn't tell what it was, but I could see her eyes slowly fill with fear. After crouching down before him in a submissive manner, she took a few steps backwards and ran off. The male wolf stared in the direction she ran off in for a few seconds, then turned to me. I stepped back in fear as our eyes met. I thought this was going to be the end for me. But to my greatest surprise, he gently picked up the dead rabbit and dropped it in front of me. I shifted back into my human form and nervously placed my left palm on his snout. As I stared into his eyes, a memory flashed by in my mind. One where I and Stephen were locked in the storage room, staring at each other silently, as our hearts beat in synchronicity. Suddenly, the bushes rustled, and a little girl came out. She had a large hat on, like a witch, and wore really dark clothing. "Hey, is she all right?" the little girl asked before turning to me. "Oh, hi, Gabriella. I see you've met my friend, not that you haven't already met before," she said with a giggle. She walked toward the large wolf, placed her palms on his back, and gently climbed onto him. "It is a good thing you were able to sense she was in danger. Things would have gone really badly, but we have to leave now before someone from the mansion sees us. These hunting grounds are for the alpha alone," the little girl said. The large wolf, as if obeying her, turned around and began walking away from me. "Hey!" I yelled, and he suddenly stopped. "Who are you, and how do you know my name?" I asked. The little girl turned around and said, "Does it really matter? We saved your life. You should be thankful. By the way, you should head that way. There are more wolves coming, and there is already a deer killed in that direction. If you hurry, you might make it before the bell rings," she replied, pointing to her right. I was dumbfounded by her words. How did she know all this? How did she know about the hunt and about the bell? I was about to yell again when she continued. "You are an important piece of this puzzle, Gabriella. Don't get killed before the story even starts." The ground suddenly started to rumble. I could hear and smell multiple wolves coming in my direction. I looked left and right in panic, and when I turned back to where the wolf and the little girl stood, they were gone. I immediately shifted into my wolf and ran in the direction the little girl pointed. After I had run for a few minutes, I found the deer I was previously going to catch lying on the ground. Did they do this? I thought to myself, staring at the dead animal on the ground. I quickly grabbed the deer's leg and pulled it all the way back to the door where we started. The moment I arrived, the bell rang, and to my surprise, no one else had arrived. "That little girl, she showed me a shortcut," I said, letting out a sigh. Chapter 11. Gabriella's POV. After waiting for a while at the door, other wolves started to show up with their kills hanging below their jaws. Some carry animals as small as rabbits, and some dragon games as large as boars. They all shifted back into their human forms and began walking back through the door. I looked around for the other girls, but couldn't find them until I was inside. Holding my kill tightly, "How was it?" Christine's voice sounded from behind me. I turned around to face her, and I found all three girls smiling at me. "Whoa, that is amazing, and it is only your first time," Clarabelle exclaimed, staring at my game. "Well, A lot of things happened, but I don't want to go into detail, I replied with a smile as sweat rolled down my face. Let's go dump these bad boys and get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day, Christine said, tapping her catch twice on its stomach. We all nodded, then followed her to the area where the kills were submitted. As we walked through the crowd, questions kept popping up in my head. I couldn't wrap my mind around who that little girl was and the wolf. I had a feeling I knew him. We all dumped our kills in the submission area. It was like a vault underground where men underneath would process the kills, dumping the useless ones and preserving the useful. We headed for the showers and took long baths to get rid of the irky smell of sweat and blood from our bodies. I let out a long sigh as the warm water came into contact with my skin. I could feel all the tension and pain in my body slowly vanish, like the water washed them away. I stood still in the shower, pondering what my life would be like from here. A maid going hunting. Whoever thought such an idea had been thought of? I closed my eyes tightly and clenched my fists at the fact that I had somehow accepted being a maid in my mate's home. After all, I was used to the life, and it wasn't like I had much of a choice. He hadn't rejected me nor had he accepted me. The memory of the first day we met came into my head again. The look in his eyes, it was clear the person in this situation wasn't the one I felt a mate bond with. Something really weird was going on. I stepped out of the showers with a towel around my body and hurried to the room to get dressed. The girls were all waiting. As I stepped into the room, I raised my head and found them all staring at me like I had done something wrong. What is going on? I asked, a little worried by the whole situation. What happened out there? Marie asked. She was usually not the first to speak. This meant something was really up. I don't understand, I replied, stuttering a little. You haven't been yourself since you got back from the hunt. You've been awfully quiet and a tad bit distant, Christine said. I was attacked in the forest, I replied, turning to face the ground. What? Why didn't you say anything? Christine said as she hurried toward me. Are you hurt? How did you manage to escape? She asked, checking around my body for bruises. I wasn't hurt at all. Some other maid came in to rescue me, but she vanished as soon as she showed up so I could make out who it was, I replied. Oh, thank heavens. We need to find out who it is so we can properly thank her, Christine said with a smile. Actually, that wouldn't be necessary. I am sure she took off because she didn't have any of that attention, I said, a drop of sweat rolling down the side of my head. Oh, that is hogwash. We need to thank her properly, but we have to rest now. It has been a long day, and tomorrow is going to be a long day as well. We need all the energy we can get, Christine said, then walked back to her bed. Okay, I replied softly, then turned to Marie. Her face was planted on mine, and even with her blindfold on, I still felt her intense gaze piercing through my chest. She stared on for a few seconds, then turned away and laid on her bed without saying a single word. I let out a sigh, turned to my bed, and walked toward it. Just a few days after we met, and I was already lying to them. I couldn't let them know what was actually going on until I figured it out myself. I fell on my bed, and at that moment, my eyes started to grow heavy. Without knowing it, I slept off. I found myself falling deeper and deeper into a dark void. I couldn't tell if this was a dream or reality, but as I fell, all my limbs felt numb. On reaching the ground, I was caught by strong, muscular arms. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell it was a man. He locked his fingers with mine and threw me around to the slow music that played in the background. My eyes still felt heavy, but I could feel my limbs moving to the beautiful tune. As we danced on, getting lost in each other's embrace, he threw me to his left, and I found myself in a car. By my side was a tall boy. He was handsome and he had a beautiful smile on his face. He turned to me, and his lips moved. I couldn't tell what he was saying. I turned to the driver's seat and saw a male and a female sitting at the front. The male driving the car. I reached out to touch the female's shoulder, and before I knew it, the car was in the air. It tumbled twice and then landed upside down. Fuel dripped from the car, and everyone else inside it had gone unconscious. A fire soon rose and got larger as the fuel spread. Before I knew it, the car was up in flames, and in a matter of seconds it exploded. I breathed heavily as my eyes swung open. I continued to gasp, sitting on my bed and placing my left palm on my chest. I looked around the room and saw that the other girls were still asleep. The room was quiet and dark. There were no windows, and the only exit out of the room was the door a small distance from my bed. A bright orange lantern light shined through the bottom of the door, and a soft whisper followed, calling my name, Gabriella. I turned to the door and watched the bright light fade out. I quickly got back on my bed and pulled the blanket over my head, hoping whatever it was would go away. But after a few seconds, the light came through the bottom of the door again, and the whisper followed, still calling my name. This time, the voice sounded a little longer before fading out, and for some reason I just couldn't ignore it anymore. I got up from my bed and walked to the door. I pushed it open gently and stepped out. I turned to my left, and there was nothing. Then I turned to my right and saw the lantern light vanish into a corner in the hallway. I stared at the corner for a moment, took a deep breath, and followed. I ran after the bright orange light through the passages, and each time I came to a corner, the light was already at the other end of the hall. It would remain shining for a moment, then vanish, fading out with the giggle of a little girl. I wasn't the least bit comfortable with what was going on, but for some reason, I kept on following the light until it came to a halt in front of a large door. The lantern sat there, shining brightly on the carvings on the wooden door. I walked slowly toward it, and when I reached it, I picked it up and let out a sigh. What place is this now? I am completely lost, I said, as I exhaled. I stared at the large door for a moment, then turned to a small knob that hung from it. I wrapped my fingers around the knob, and was about to turn it when I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. What are you doing? Marie's voice sounded behind me. I felt a chill go down my spine, and I instinctively sprung up from the ground in fear. I fell back down and turned to Marie. What did you do that for? I asked. Me? What did I do? She asked back with a smile. I sighed, then said, Never mind. Were you following me all this time? Marie stared for a moment, then said, passing her palm over the carvings on the door. This door is really amazing, right? The carvings and smoothness this thing has are just beyond imagination. But you can't see them, can you? I said, choosing my words carefully. Well, not really, but I can feel them. This room is off limits to everyone, except the Alpha. No one knows what is in it. Rumors say that this room contains the Mortimer family's deepest, darkest secrets, Marie replied. You know, it is usually a bad idea to see a strange light and follow wherever it leads. But you, my friend, are one brave she-wolf, she continued with a giggle. A smile grew on my face, and after a moment it vanished again. The thought that something led me here was frightening enough. Now I was standing in front of a room that held the most important things in Mortimer history. What was I supposed to do here? You know something, don't you? Marie asked suddenly. A lot of strange things have been happening to me in this mansion lately. I don't think I am quite ready to reveal them to anyone yet. Not until I understand what is going on, I replied, staring back at her. That is completely fine. Let's head back. We'll get in trouble if we stay here for too long, Marie said, tapping me on the shoulder. As we walked away from the large door, I felt an ominous presence suddenly show up behind us. I turned around to see what it was, and I saw a little girl standing before the door. The lantern she had released green light, and her eyes glowed green. A green light shot out of her mouth as it curled up into a sinister smile. And as the light from her lantern went off, she vanished. As I stared at the darkness that now surrounded the door. "Hey, what are you doing?" Marie whispered. It was after I'd heard her voice that I realized I was standing still. I gulped in some saliva, then rushed back to her, and we both returned to the room. The Mortimers' mansion was definitely a better place than the Montgomerys'. I had everything I needed, and only needed to work a few hours a day. An added bonus was that everyone was friendly, and we engaged in conversations any chance we got. But the one thing that made the Mortimers' mansion a lot more discomforting was its mystery. "Have you heard about it?" a female asked with a British accent while we washed the dishes. "About what?" I replied. "The story of the old witch that visited this mansion years ago," she continued. "A witch? Let me guess. She cursed the Mortimers," I jestfully said, stacking up the dishes I had cleaned up. "Well, not really. When the witch arrived at the mansion many years ago, the Alphaking during that time treated her very well. In fact, a party was thrown in her honor. It is said that the king made a deal with the witch that day. And before she left, she gave a warning, and the king and his family never left the promises again." I stopped what I was doing, then turned to her. "What warning was it?" I asked. "No one knows. Some believe it is the reason everyone in the Mortimer family's bloodline, down to Alpha Stephen, has never stepped outside the mansion," she answered. A memory of my encounter with Stephen flashed in my mind. I could clearly remember him stepping outside the gates. He didn't even return until late at night. Something wasn't adding up. "I'll go help the others in the baking room," I said, walking away from her. "All right then, dearie. Don't overwork yourself," she replied. I walked out of the room I was in, walked through some passages, and entered a hall where the front door was located. There she was, standing like a statue. She was the only female warrior wolf in the mansion, and this was her job since birth to watch the door. Nothing could break her concentration. As I walked past her, I thought to myself, according to what Gregory told me before, she has been doing this job all her life. This means she is the only one who truly knows the Alpha's movements. I walked to her and tapped her on the shoulder. I tapped her repeatedly, but she felt nothing. I pulled on her arm and even tried to sweep her off her feet, but she just wouldn't budge. She was like a brick wall. Suddenly, I had an idea. I rushed to the baking room and brought out a large tray stacked with numerous types of cakes. I passed it around her and under her nose to see if the scent would force her to move. But no, she was adamant. I let out a sigh and sat on one side of the hall quietly, staring at her. "Attack her!" A female's voice whispered in my head. I looked around, wondering where the voice came from, but didn't think too much about it as it was probably only in my head. I got up from where I sat and walked into the bakery again, this time bringing out a bunch of knives. I started to throw the knives at her with as much precision as I could muster, but each knife went right past her face and behind her head, sticking to the other wall. She didn't even move. "Are you mocking me?" I exclaimed. Gritting my teeth in frustration, I held the last dagger tightly and said to myself, "I hope I don't get in trouble for this." Then rushed at her with the knife, heading for her face. The knife was about to touch her when she grabbed my arm and turned to me slowly. Hi," I said, with a smile. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice sounding very stern. "Well, I just wanted to ask you some questions," I answered, as she tightened her grip on my arm. "Snapping your bone in two would be much too easy of a task if you get on my nerves." Do not disturb me while I am working, or I will end your life. Do you understand? She said this as she continued to tighten her grip. I groaned in pain and replied, Yeah, understood. Please let go. She twisted my arm in the wrong direction and pushed me to the ground. Oh, WW. I whimpered as I held onto my arm. Hey, can I come see you after your work? I asked, but she refused to reply. She resumed her position as the brick wall that she was, and nothing I said could get through to her. My brows furrowed, and I squinted my eyes at her. Hurting me like that wouldn't go unpunished. I was going to get revenge. I picked up my tray of hot cakes and snuck behind her to dump it on her head. I raised the tray up, and as I was about to turn it over, the front door creaked open. Alpha, Stephen, and Gregory walked in. I saw Stephen's face, and I immediately hid behind the brick wall lady, aligning my body with hers to make it look like there was just one person there. The Montgomerys from the Darkhound pack have successfully delivered your message to the packs. We only await their reply, Gregory said. That is good news. My plan to merge the packs is one that will change the world for centuries to come. I believe any smart alpha will not object, Stephen said. Should we send some of our wolves over there to assist, in case there are any difficulties? Gregory asked. No. If there are any problems, they'll handle it themselves, Stephen replied, carrying his usual bonk emotionless expression. They both walked past me, and I stealthily tiptoed toward the door to the next passageway before they could notice I was there. Listen, Gregory, I understand that you've gotten quite close to the new maid in the mansion, but please refrain from telling her about my plans. You know she is the Alpha's daughter from the Darkhound pack. I bet she wouldn't take it very well if she found out we were using her people as lab rats, Stephen said. On hearing this, I stopped moving and turned to them. I understand, sir. I'll make sure to keep everything under wraps. Meanwhile, the preparations for the celebration to thank the council for accepting your proposal are well underway. The maids have already gone hunting, and I must say, their games this time were quite amusing. Gregory replied with a smile. Well, it is their job. They already know the consequences if they don't do it. It is not them doing hard work. It is the fear of losing their life, Stephen said. I clenched my fists tightly. I so much wanted to walk up to him and give him a piece of my mind, but doing that would only be for naught. I exhaled calmly, then walked away from them quickly. The baking room wasn't too far from the hall I was previously in. It was a very hot place where the most delicious cakes, bread, and pastries were made for the masses and for special occasions. Every evening after the day's job was done, the maids would rush to get it squeaky clean again to avoid contamination of any of the foods produced. I moved from one shelf to another, stacking cakes and piles of bread, until I got extremely tired. The sun finally came down after a long day, and the bell for bedtime was rung. The maids exited their working areas one by one and headed for the showers to freshen up. I tried my best to keep myself awake because, on the other hand, I wasn't at all done with my day. As the maids hurried back to their rooms, I snuck my way past everyone, heading to Gregory's duty post. It was a dimly lit office with a small window through which he could see the entire forest below. Gregory was in charge of sorting out paperwork and passing messages between the pack and others. It was a dangerous job to do, whether it was a message of peace or one of war. I knocked twice on his door and took a step back. After waiting for a few seconds, the door opened and Gregory stuck his head out to check who it was. His eyes met mine, and he looked left and right to see if anyone else was coming. Come in, quickly, he said. He grabbed my right arm and immediately pulled me in. What are you? I was about to ask when he suddenly placed his left palm over my mouth. Be quiet, or he'll hear you, he said. He slowly pulled his palm away from my lips and asked, What were you thinking? If the Alpha had caught your scent earlier today, you would have been in serious trouble. What the hell is going on? You guys are going to use the Darkhound pack as a sacrifice for your little plans to merge the packs. I have friends there who might get hurt if any of the other packs decide to attack them. Gregory walked back to his seat and fell on it, letting out a sigh. Look, if it were up to me, I wouldn't even let it happen. I think it is absurd to throw away other people's lives for the sake of some dream that is probably not going to become reality. But what can I do? I am only a beta following orders, right? Alpha Steven is even more heartless than I imagined. I can't believe I fell for him, I said silently. What? Gregory asked, requesting clarity. Nothing. It is nothing. I'll be heading back to my chambers now. Sorry I disturbed you, I replied with a smile, then turned around to leave. Gabriella, Gregory called as I wrapped my palm around the door's knob. I turned around to face him, and he said softly, I just wanted to say that I think you are really beautiful. I stared at him for a moment, then replied with a blank stare, Thank you. I walked back to the hall late at night and found the Lady Wall still standing there, staring at the door endlessly. I let out a sigh, then walked toward her to try my luck one more time. The rays from the sun shot through the multiple windows on the external wall. My eyes felt heavy, and the lower lids had turned gray from tiredness. I wondered how Cortana survived without sleep. She was definitely not your average werewolf. I continued to stare at the wooden door, waiting for Cortana to awaken. As the rays from the sun reached her face, she let out a soft groan and then yawned, rubbing her eyes. She suddenly stopped, opened her eyes, and immediately sat up. What the? I fell asleep. How did that happen? She questioned with shock on her face. I could tell she was definitely not a fan of the idea of sleeping. I might be able to answer that question, I said from behind her. She turned to face me, and before I knew it, tears started to seep out of her eyes. Hey, what is wrong? I asked, placing my palms on her shoulder. I've failed. Watching this door is the only reason I've stayed alive all my life. It is the only thing I know how to do, and I failed at it, she explained, tears pouring out of her eyes. Shocked by her breakdown and the fact she actually let me touch her, I replied. No, you haven't failed. You just felt a little tired and didn't know when you dozed off. But that is the thing. I am not supposed to get tired. I am Cortana, she said with a whimper. I was shocked to my bones. Never in my life would I have thought someone like her would break down so much over a small mistake. Although I understood her position, after all, she trained for just this all her life. Look, I am sorry you feel that way, but you shouldn't let one little mistake ruin what you've worked so hard for all your life. Think of it this way. Now that your body has rested a little, you can stay up even longer and protect the mansion from whatever you are protecting it from, I said, trying to console her. Her eyes widened. The Alpha everyone, are they okay? Nothing slipped through while I was out, right? She asked, looking very worried. Calm down. Everyone's fine. Nothing bad happened, I know, because I stayed up watching the door all night, I replied with a smile. You watched the door in my place? Cortana asked, and I nodded. A smile grew on her face and she said, Thanks. The smile on her face vanished again, and she got back on her feet to continue her job. Hey, wait. Before you go all stiff again, I need to ask you some questions, I said. Also getting up from the ground, Cortana went quiet, staring at the front door again. I tapped her shoulder twice, and she refused to answer. Cortana, I called, but she still remained silent. The bells started to ring, and I could hear the rumbling footsteps of all the maids in the mansion as they exited their rooms. "Oh, Common!" I exclaimed, marching away from Cortana. Tau end. The day was extremely busy. We went from table to table, serving the high-ranking members of both the Dark Hound Pack and the Dark Moon Pack. The Montgomerys, my old family, were given a special table along with the council members who were present. As I served from table to table, I could see my parents laughing and having a good time. Having no clue what allows Stephen had planned for their pack, my little brother sat beside his father with a doublet and hose and had a fur coat around his neck and shoulders. I tried my best to avoid eye contact with any of them and served at tables that were far away from theirs. After a long day of moving from table to table, serving food, and cleaning up the messes of the guests, I felt extremely tired, and my legs could barely move. I carried a tray with some cake on it and staggered into the dining hall. I felt dizzy, and my eyes started to get heavy. As I walked past some of the tables to deliver the meals, I bumped into one of the many guests in the hall. The wine she held in hand turned over on her red dress, and she shrieked at the drink's cold temperature. "I am so sorry." "Oh my God," I said, pulling out a napkin from a pocket in my uniform. I tried my best to wipe the drink off her body, apologizing repeatedly. It is okay. I am fine." "Are you all right?" the lady asked. "Oh no. I am so tired and frustrated. I got dizzy and caused this mess. I am going to be in so much trouble," I said with a sad expression, crouching down to pick up the pieces of the broken wine glass. "Hey, get up. Come sit for a moment, someone else will handle that," the lady said, pulling me up. "But ma'am, sitting down now will get me in more trouble," I replied. "Going back down? But you are tired. You need to rest. And I insist you take a seat," she said, pulling me back up. "All right," I said, letting out a sigh. She walked me to one of the empty tables, and I pulled a seat out. She sat down on the other end of the table and locked her eyes on me. "What is your name?" she asked. "I am Gabriella. Gabriella Montgomery," I replied. "Wait, you are the child of Erilyn Montgomery, the Luna of the Darkhound Pack?" she asked. "Well, yes. I was sold as a bride to Alpha Stephen for the sake of peace between the two packs," I answered. "That is horrible. I bet you wish you could go back." She said it with concern in her voice. "Actually, no. I mean, I have friends there I would really love to see again, but overall I prefer it here. The people are a lot less pernicious. Plus, I am only a grain of sand in the heap, so I go unnoticed around here," I replied with a smile. "So you are a lot more comfortable being here?" the lady asked, and I nodded. Sounds fair enough, after all. The Alpha doesn't really have time to pay attention to his workers. He is too busy trying to take over the world of the Lycans. A silly dream if you ask me. But if it brings peace, who am I to object? The lady said. I let out a giggle. "Pardon me, I still don't know who you are," I said. "Oh, sorry about that. My name is Anaya Dragnon, and I am accompanying a friend who got invited to the party," she replied. OWWK. "Well, it is nice to meet you, Miss Anaya Dragnon. I hope to see you again sometime soon. I have to get back to work before someone sees me and reports to the Alpha," I said with a bright smile as I got up from my seat. As I turned around to walk away from her, she called my name, Gabriella. I turned to face her again, and she pulled out a card. "That is my address. Please visit me whenever you have the chance. I would love to have a chat with you again." "You are a very interesting person," she said. I smiled and bowed, picking the card off the table. "Thank you, Miss Anaya," I replied. "I am really proud of you, Stephen. You've come really far on this agenda of yours. Farther than any Mortimer has ever come, Evelyn said with a bright smile. She stood before me on the balcony of the mansion, wearing a golden dress and holding a glass of red wine. Yes. It was always my father's dream to see me achieve great things. He wasn't too specific about what it would be, but as I grew up, I learned that there was no greater goal than this. Now that the council has agreed to support me, none of the other packs stand a chance, I replied. Once I finally take over all the other packs and gain a position in the council, all the other alphas will be made my subordinates. And any of them who dare to defy me will be punished painfully. I continued, you know, you are such a unique man. When you were younger, everyone saw you as strange and delusional. Only your father, and of course me, saw the potential you had. I only wish you don't forget me after you've risen to the top. Evelyn said, walking closer to me. She dropped her wine glass on a table beside us and placed her arms around my neck. I've loved you for longer than you can imagine. I am the only one who deserves to be your Luna, Stephen, and you know it. She said, pulling her face closer to mine. I remained silent, watching as her lipstick sparkled under the moonlight. Her dark brown eyes shimmered like marbles, and strands of her gorgeous locks followed like threads in the wind. Her lips were about to come into contact with mine when we both suddenly heard clinking. We immediately turned in the direction of the sound and found the new girl, Gabriella, staring at us completely petrified. My apologies, my lord. I did not mean to disturb you in your private hour. I'll take my leave now, she said, stuttering a bit, then turned around to leave the balcony. Gabriella, I called, stepping away from Evelyn. She turned around facing the ground, and I asked, what is it that you want? She remained silent for a moment, then said softly, the council members are about to take their leave. I was asked to come inform you. All right then, tell them I'll be out shortly, I replied, turning away from her. She nodded, then went back into the mansion. I walked back to the edge of the balcony and said in a stern tone, never do that again, Evelyn. We are not mates, and we probably will never be. What if it wasn't my servant who walked through that door? Oh, would you please just stop it? Is that all you care about, Stephen? I've been standing by your side since we were children. My parents worked so hard to make sure your father remained alpha till his death, and to make sure you remained alpha till your death. When will you notice me? I know that the mate bond hasn't happened yet, but my love for you is true, and a silly chill down the spine or spark between two wolves can't change that. Open your eyes, Stephen. There's no one for you but me, she concluded, then marched away from me angrily. Evelyn, I called out, and she stopped immediately. She turned around, looking directly at me, waiting for what I would say next. I suddenly enveloped my entire body with my red alpha aura, creating intense pressure in the room. The table and the walls started to vibrate, and her body went completely stiff. This is the power of an alpha, Evelyn. Whether or not your parents helped my family, as alpha, I will always be on top, I said. I walked closer to her, and her nose started to bleed. The next time you do something that could potentially jeopardize my plans, I will do something I might regret. I don't want to have to stain my palms with the blood of a friend, and you certainly do not want to get your family's name wiped off the face of the earth, I continued. I walked away from her and back to the edge of the balcony. Then deactivated the alpha aura. Evelyn fell to the ground and started to breathe heavily. You've been warned, I concluded. And, I apologize for coming out late, I said, as I stepped into the room with Evelyn walking behind me. She had her head down and placed her arms behind her back. Good evening, Alpha Stephen. The party was a lot more than we expected. You didn't have to go to such lengths to entertain us, one of the council members said with a smile. The pleasure is all mine. I do hope we could have this kind of friendly gathering a lot more in the future, I replied. Well, you'll have as many friendly gatherings as you wish, once you become the overall alpha. It is only a matter of time, he said, laughing a bit. We're going to take our leave now. Please extend our thanks to all the maids and warrior wolves who worked hard to put all of this together. Another council member spoke. Of course I will. I am really glad you enjoyed yourselves. Let me see you off, I replied. We walked past Cortana and outside the mansion. Then the council members all got in different chariots. Each chariot was colored black and had golden spoke guards and harnesses. They also had golden carvings around their bodies that signified that they belonged to the council members. I walked to the chariot where Lady Anaya sat. I really appreciate you coming today. I hope to see you again soon, I said. Oh, Common. You know, your father would be really proud of you. You've come so far, she complimented. Well, as Alpha, I have to stay at the top of my game or I'll be pushed aside by some other person. I replied, True. By the way, I wanted to ask, the girl named Gabriella is one of your maids. Is she really from the Montgomery family? Anaya asked. I was a bit surprised by her question. Well, yes, she is. She was offered to me by her parents to keep me from attacking and destroying their pack. Honestly, I have no particular use for her as I already have so many servants. Did she do anything wrong? If you don't mind me asking, I said. No, not at all. In fact, she is probably the most interesting person I've met in your mansion. I could tell just from a short conversation that she was special. Anaya replied, Anyway, I'll be taking my leave now. Until next time, Alpha Stephen, she concluded. I watched as their chariots drove off into the night and let out a sigh, saying, Gabriella. After that conversation with Anaya, I started to notice Gabriella a little more. All this while, it felt like she was never in the mansion, but now I see her almost everywhere. It was almost like the universe was trying to tell me something. She kept on making absurd mistakes every time she was around me. She spilled food, tore clothes, and even accidentally threw water where she wasn't supposed to. Every single mistake she made was enough for me to declare her an enemy to the pack, make her a rogue and send her packing. But for some reason, I couldn't, not because the head of the council knew her, but because every time I stood before her, a sudden aura she emanated prevented me from sending her away. I was in my room again, staring through my window at the gates. The last time I tried to go out, I failed. Instead, I fainted at the gates and woke up late at night. Luckily, none of the maids or warriors saw me. That would have been humiliating. Suddenly, a knock sounded on my door. Come in, it is unlocked, I said, turning to face it. The door creaked open slowly, and Gregory walked in. Sir, a lot of letters have arrived for you from the Darkhound pack. They're replies from all 10 packs around the globe, he said. Oh, that is quick, I replied, then continued. Bring them to my office. We'll go through each one together. Gregory nodded and bowed, then walked out of the room. 10. This one's from the Full Moon pack, and it reads, We extend our deepest apologies if this letter arrives at your desk late. We are happy to tell you that we gladly accept your offer and think it is a wonderful idea you have to merge the packs. We will continue to support you as you have supported us over the years. Sincerely, Alpha of the Full Moon pack. Wow. I guess that is one down, Gregory read. I picked up one of the letters and pulled it out of its envelope. The Crescent Moon pack will not be party to your foolery. We have done fine on our own for years and have no need for the support of your pack, or anyone else's for that matter. We respectfully decline this offer and reject this foolish idea. Wage war against us. And we'll be ready and prepared to bring you down. Oh, feisty. It seems like we have our first enemy. I would like you to reply to all the letters that are like this. Gregory, I said with a blank stare. Oh, what should they say? Gregory asked, leaning forward. You think about that. I know you'll come up with something good, I replied. We went through all the letters one by one, reading through the acceptances and rejections of the 10 greatest people in the world. 6 of the most powerful alphas, wise and strong, or maybe weak and scared, accepted my offer, and the others spat on my face. One letter among the rejections caught my attention and raised a lot of curiosity in my mind. The moment I lifted the envelope, I knew this was from no ordinary alpha. This one's from the alpha of the Blackburn pack. "Please check what is in it, Gregory," I said, handing the envelope over to him. Gregory stared at the envelope for a moment, probably wondering why I asked him to be the one to open it. He collected the envelope from my hand, removed the seal, and pulled out the letter inside. It is blank," Gregory stuttered. I didn't know where it came from, but I suddenly started to laugh. I got up from my seat and walked over to a window in the office. "Alpha Darren has always been such a slippery rock," I said. "A slippery rock that is quite an ironic way to describe a person." "What does it mean?" Gregory asked. "It means he is the only person I can truly consider my rival. Out of all the other pack alphas, he is the only one who has feats that have exceeded my expectations." Stories of Darren Dillard spread far and wide, making him one of 2 of the most feared alphas in the world, I explained. "But surely you are heights above him in power," Gregory said. "Yes, Gregory. But the moment I decide to blink, he'll have my head before I even know it. I can't give him that chance." After my discussion with Gregory, I decided to take a walk around the mansion. I walked through the gardens, inspecting each rosebush and flower I came across. These bushes were ages old, left by my father and his father. It was like they were enchanted flowers that could never die. The maids around the mansion who served as gardeners trimmed the bushes carefully every day to keep them from overgrowing. As I stopped to take a sniff from one of the flowers, 3 maids walked by. Gabriella was one of them. The moment they spotted me, they all bowed. "Alpha, good evening." They all greeted me, taking a bow. Gabriella's head was down, probably because she felt I was very upset with her recent behavior. She probably feared I would be kicking her out of the mansion anytime soon. But the truth was that I really wanted to know more about her. The powerful aura I always saw around her was still there. I wasn't sure she knew about it, but it wasn't something to be ignored. "Could you excuse us?" I said to the other 2 maids. They both bowed and quickly walked away. Then I turned to Gabriella. "What is wrong?" I asked. Nothing. I just feel a little unwell, that is all," she replied, her voice shaking a little. I let out a sigh. "Listen, I know taking you away from your home must have really affected you and your productivity, but I want to assure you that this is as comfortable a place as your home was," I said, trying as much as possible to calm her heart. "So please calm yourself down. I have no plans of sending you away. In fact, henceforth, you are going to be my personal maid," I continued. I could see her face light up the moment I said that. I don't know if that is a really good idea. I've been messing up a lot lately, and I really don't deserve that position," she said. "Gabriella, it is not a matter of whether you deserve the position or not. There is something about you I just don't understand. I believe the position will help me keep an eye on you, and also help you focus more," I said. "Oh, all right then. If you'd excuse me, I have to rush with the other girls to get some supplies from the market in the city," she said. "Very well, you may leave," I answered. And she walked past me, the aura around her slowly vanishing as her heartbeat slowed down. My brows furrowed as I watched her walk out the gates with the other maids. 2 muscular arms flew through the air at insane speeds, clashing into the body of a training dummy made from golden straws and rocks. The intense blows, striking the dummy's body one by one, shattered the rocks within it, and after a few minutes, it came falling down like a house of cards. Next, a male voice sounded, ordering his guards to bring him more training dummies. His entire body was covered in sweat, and his abs and muscles glistened like they had been painted with oil. "My lord, you shouldn't overwork yourself so much. You don't give your wounds enough time to heal, and that can be very dangerous for your health," another male standing a small distance from him advised. He wore attire fit for a soldier of his time, but had no armor, as that would make shifting difficult. "Eugene, common. The more I train my body to be resistant to pain and physical stress, the more efficient I'll be during battle. As a wolf, I'll be faster, stronger, and overall a lot better than some daydreaming fool who thinks he can scare me with a letter saying he wants to unite the packs," the alpha replied, taking a drink from his bottle. He had dirty blonde hair, bright green eyes, and was of the same age as Stephen. "By the way, the letter you asked to be sent to Alpha Stephen has been delivered. We haven't gotten any reply from him," Eugene said. "What else is he supposed to do? Come out of his mansion? That family has never been able to come out of that building since their third generation. Stephen can't possibly be that dangerous. It seems to me you underestimate him too much. May I remind you that he has achieved unbelievable feats over the years, even from within his mansion. There were 15 packs in total. 5 went ablaze after they challenged him. And now no one even remembers they existed. You are sounding a little too worried, Eugene. That is not something one should catch a beta doing. Have you forgotten who I am? I am Darren Dillard, the Alpha of Blackburn, the savior of the forgotten, the tamer of rogues. If it is a war he wants, let him come." Eugene remained quiet, staring at his alpha as he said those words. "By the way, how are our troops doing?" "I haven't gotten word from them in days," Darren asked. "Maria has managed to infiltrate the rogue commander's territory and is preparing to launch an attack on him soon. If things go well, we'll be able to free the human and lichen prisoners there and completely take down their unlawful pack for good." "They only await your orders," Eugene replied. "Great news. Please provide me with all the information she has gathered on the Rogue King and his pack. I think I'll be paying him a little visit before the storm hits." Darren replied, walking past him. "All right, sir. I shall bring the papers to your desk before sundown. In the meantime, what do you think we should prepare for?" "You know Alpha Stephen is quite unpredictable," Eugene said. "That is where you are wrong, my friend. No man is truly unpredictable. The first thing he'll do is send the council to come convince me on his behalf. If that fails, he'll start looking for weak spots. He'll possibly try to plant a spy to watch my every move. Then he'll try to take down my betas to weaken my werewolf army. If he is as smart as I think he is, he'll avoid the obvious route and come up with a much more sly strategy. I can't wait to see what he pulls off," Darren said with a smile. "That's seeing." Darren got out of his chariot and walked into the gates of the Rogue King's territory. The entire place was covered in gray mist, and glowing red eyes could be seen shimmering from different positions in the darkness. Darren could tell clearly that the king had already set a trap for him. "Welcome, Alpha Darren." The Rogue King said this with a smile as he got up from his seat. He wore a black turban and had black eye makeup on his lower lids. He wore much golden jewelry over large, well-designed Indian clothing called the salwar kameez. "Please have a seat." The king ordered one of his female servants to bring Darren a seat. Darren fell on the golden cushion, and the king said, "I see you came alone. When you sent a letter saying you were on your way, I thought it was more of a congregational visit." He spoke in an Arabian accent. A female with dark blue eyes and dark brown hair stood beside him, gently massaging his shoulders. "Well, I didn't come for a visit. I came to collect what rightfully belongs to me," Darren said with a smile. The king went silent, looking a little confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. The female who stood behind him suddenly walked to Darren's side, crouched down, and placed a kiss on his lips. then proceeded to massage his shoulders. "Oh, how I've missed these soft hands of yours," Darren said. "Oh, shut up, you bad boy. The next time you leave me alone on such a dangerous errand, I'll make sure to cut off your head." The female spoke softly with a smile. "What is this nonsense?" the king yelled angrily as he got annoyed witnessing the female's actions. "Oh, you still don't understand. Let me break it down for you," the female said, then explained. "My name is Maria Coldheart, and I am the Luna of the Blackburn Pack. My darling Alpha here wanted me to get some fresh air outdoors, so he sent me here to play you for a fool. In other words, Rogue King, you are dead meat," Darren said, completing Maria's sentence. The Rogue King started to laugh. He placed his palm over his face and laughed with his mouth wide open, revealing his gold-plated teeth. "Rogues!" he suddenly yelled, but no one came in. He waited for a moment, then yelled again, but no one answered. "If you are trying to call in those guard dogs you planted outside, don't bother, they're probably already dead. Also, all the secret passages and escape routes in the building have been blocked, and all your soldiers have been maimed. Don't worry though, we didn't touch the women. We'll be taking both them and your captives back to our territory, where they can be released," Darren said, as a smile grew on his face. "You bastard!" the king roared loudly, then transformed into a large black wolf. His wolf was the height of 2 men, and it had black fire that released black smoke. He roared at Darren, waiting for him to transform into his wolf so they would battle. But instead, Maria stepped forward and shifted into hers. Her wolf was a dark purple beast with glowing markings on its fur. It had purple eyes and was the same size as the Rogue King. The Rogue King roared and launched himself at Maria, and she did the same. In under a few seconds, the Rogue King's head went flying outside the building through the front door. The bleeding head transformed into ash and flew off into the sky. "I can't believe he called himself a king," Maria said, after she had shifted back into human form. "He was a rogue ruling over other rogues." "You shouldn't have expected more," Darren said, as they both walked out of the building. "Let's head home, shall we?" He said it with a smile, holding Maria's hand. Lady Anaya was one who always had a very planned day. From the activities she would start out with in the morning to those she would end her day with, everything was perfectly scheduled. Her eyelids swung open in the morning, as sun rays spread through the curtains into her large room. Her bed was an extra-large king-sized bed, and 4 pillars stood at the 4 vertices, holding up a golden yellow veil that prevented anyone from seeing her during sleep. "Good morning, Lady Anaya," 4 maids said with smiles on their faces as she stepped through the curtains. "Good morning, Elizabeth, Mary, Jasmine, and Edith." "I hope I haven't slept for too long," Anaya said, smiling back at them. "Not at all, my lady. Let's hurry up and get you ready for the day, shall we?" Edith said. She was the oldest of the 4 girls, so she had been with Lady Anaya for longer. She was the head of maids in Anaya's home and took care of her very well, as ordered by her husband. Lady Anaya put on her slippers, and the ladies followed her into the bathroom, where they had already prepared a hot bath. The bathtub was covered in rose petals, and a scent like the forest lingered in the air. Ananya climbed up 2 steps to get in front of the tub. She removed her clothes and got in, resting her back on one of its edges. The girls gathered around her, picking up soap to gently wash her up. Edith gently scrubbed her back with the sponge, and the other girls scrubbed her arms and legs. "How was the party at Willowcrest?" Edith asked. "Oh, it was quite splendid. The Alpha of the Dark Moon Pack is such a young, smart, and kind man. I must say, I am quite surprised that he has achieved so much at such a young age. All the other packs tremble at the thought of his name," Anaya answered. "It sounds to me like you are quite interested in him, my lady," Edith said jestfully. "Oh, stop it, Edith. Alpha Stephen is a charming man, but he is young enough to be my son. I couldn't possibly have those kinds of unholy thoughts about him. Besides, he has probably already felt a mate bond with that Evelyn girl. He has been with her since childhood, Anaya answered. The way you speak of him so highly. He must have made quite the impression, Edith said. Well, let's just hope he doesn't grow power-hungry and tries to kill all the other alphas even after they've given up on him. If that ever happens, the council will have to put him down, Anaya replied. They all remained silent again. For a moment, only the sound of the sponges scrubbing Anaya's body sounded as she stared into a mirror in front of her. There is one person who did pique my interest, though. She said her name was Gabriella. Anaya spoke again. Oh, tell me about her, Edith replied. Well, I only got to speak with her for a few minutes, so all I know about her is that she is a daughter of the Montgomerys of the Darkhound Pack. She was sold to Stephen Mortimer for the price of peace, Anaya answered. Oh my. That must be really terrible, Edith said softly as her facial expression contoured in worry. On the contrary, she says she actually prefers the way things are in the Mortimer's mansion. I am guessing things were a lot more difficult for her with the Montgomerys, Anaya replied. Oh then, what is it about her that caught your attention? Edith asked. Well, it is a little bit complicated. The moment I bumped into her, I felt this momentary connection. It was nothing like a mate bond, but it was definitely out of the ordinary. A feeling that was never there suddenly filled my heart, like I'd found something I lost long ago, Anaya replied. Edith stopped scrubbing her back, and her facial expression changed. That is very strange, she said. Is something wrong, Edith? Why did you stop? Anaya asked. Nothing, my lady. Hurry up, girls. Lady Anaya has a long day ahead of her, Edith replied, putting in a smile and facing the other girls. Zaway. Make sure my letter reaches the Alpha of the Diamond Pack. He just lost his Luna in a Rouge attack, and I want to be the first to give my condolences to him. Also, pass my greetings to the Luna of the Bloodhound Pack on your way. I wasn't able to attend her birthday celebration because of some other matters I had to attend to. So extend my deepest apologies to her and tell her I'll be seeing her soon. Anaya ordered one of her messengers. Madam, the meeting is about to come, a maid said, coming from behind Anaya. Okay then. Let's head to the hall immediately. Anaya replied with a smile. I and some of the other council members have been discussing. We have come to the conclusion that you are no longer fit to be the leader of the council. Lady Anaya, one of the council members, spoke. He had a white beard, and each of the council members wore white clothing. Stating behind tall podiums painted with the mixed colors of gold and black, discussing the matters of the council without the knowledge of the council head is considered treason. But let's keep that for later. What are your reasons exactly? Well, our reason is that we believe you are weak and too afraid to run the affairs of the council. You accepted Stephen Mortimer's offer with a bat of an eyelash without considering the consequences and repercussions merging the packs would cause. Secondly, you were spotted communicating with a maid at his mansion without your veil on. Now I'd like to ask, what really is your relationship with that young man? The council member spoke. Anaya let out a sigh. Firstly, I can see that Marvin isn't here today, and those are some bold words coming from a man who spends his monthly income sleeping around with different women in not just this city, but in Willowcrest and other cities around the world, even with a wife and children at home. My veil is on at all times. And the only reason I opened it to the maid was because I trusted her. And as for accepting Stephen's offer, I believe it is in the best interest of everybody. And even if I am in some kind of relationship with Stephen, I am a single woman and he is a single man. We're both adults. So I see nothing wrong with it. So you are admitting to having an affair with Stephen Mortimer? The man spoke again, his voice sounding a little louder. No, I am not, Maldred. I am only saying it wouldn't be wrong if I did. All your claims are based on stupid assumptions, and you have no clear proof of a crime I've committed. I, on the other hand, have you wrapped around my fingers. And any mistake you make will be your demise, Anaya said calmly. The man went silent again, clenching his fists tightly as he stared at Lady Anaya directly in her eyes. Anaya turned to the other council members, asking, "Does anyone else feel like mouthing off to me this fine morning?" Every one of the council members in the hall remained silent. Good, because I don't want to have to remind you. My husband chose me to take his place as head, not because he was in love with me, but because he believed I was capable. With the kind of problems and dangers that come with being council head, it is not a job you would give to a loved one. Meeting adjourned, Anaya concluded. She got up from her seat and walked out of the hall with her maids following behind her. Please, madam, do not let that Maldruid spoil your morning. He can be such a hypocrite sometimes, Edith said as she followed behind Anaya. Maldruid is a fool who thinks he can push me out of composure with his little schemes. I have ways to deal with people like him, Anaya replied. Anaya, Lady Anaya. A young man came running from behind her. What is wrong, Daniel? Anaya asked. There has been an accident in the city. It involved one of the members of the council and his family. Your attention is needed at the scene immediately, he answered, breathing heavily. Anaya rushed with some of her warrior wolves to the scene on the outskirts of the city immediately. The other council members were already there, and the accident victims had now been covered in white blankets. Anaya walked to the victims and asked one of her guards to remove the cloth from the man's face. As he did, she gasped in shock. Marvin, she said softly, as she placed her palms over her mouth. Anaya turned to the car that had been overturned by the crash, and a memory suddenly flashed in her head. It was blurry, but she could see herself in a car on fire, leaking fuel from its sides. She turned to the window and saw the legs of a male walking away from the car seconds before it exploded. I walked through a passage leading to maid rooms. I was tired and exhausted. I hadn't been myself since the party with the council members. My mind would often trail off during work, or I would feel dizzy every time I tried to lift something heavy. Every time I was around Stephen, I felt this sadness well up inside me that made me mess up everything I touched. I leaned against a window along the passage and let out a sigh. The memory of the incident I witnessed during the party flashed through my mind again, and tears started to fill my eyes. I tightened my fist and clenched my teeth as my tears dropped one by one. He is my mate. He belongs to me. Why couldn't I do anything? I whimpered, staring through the window. Why were we born in such cruel circumstances? When I was still in the Darkhound pack, I imagined a world where we would be happy for the rest of our lives after finding each other. A world where nothing would come between us ever again. But being here, that was a dream that was never going to come true. We were both too different. I suddenly heard footsteps coming toward me. Hey, Gabriella. Marie's voice sounded as both she and Clarabelle stepped into the rays of sunlight that shone. Hello, guys, I replied, stuttering. I smell tears. Wait, are you crying? Marie asked, sniffing the surrounding air. No, I am not. Clarabelle is crying, I said, turning away from both of them. What? I am not crying, Clarabelle said. Clarabelle. No, it is definitely not her. I'd know the scent of Clara's tears from a mile away. You are definitely crying. Hey, is something wrong? Clarabelle asked, placing her palms on my shoulder. I remained silent. I didn't want to burden them with my problems. This was my cross to carry alone. I didn't want to drag other people along. We're your friends, Gabriella. If you don't let us hear your pain, then of what use are we to you? Clarabelle said. Say something, Marie. Clarabelle urged as she turned back to face Marie. You shouldn't hold in all that pain, or it'll, blow up your heart maybe. I am not good with emotional talk, but you get what I mean, Marie said. We both gave her blank stares, and after a few seconds she said, Don't look at me like that. It is the best I can do. Well, I just feel like I've lost everything. I thought I had things under control. I thought everything would finally be okay since he was here. Turns out it was all just a lie I kept telling myself, so I wouldn't get depressed, I said softly as tears rolled down my cheeks again. Who are we talking about here? Marie asked. I let out a sigh. I know this is going to sound a little crazy, and I didn't want to have to tell you guys before, but I felt a mate bond with the alpha, and he probably felt it too at first. But now he doesn't even remember we ever met, I said. Whoa. Wait. Could you say that one more time? Marie said with shock on her face. Well, you see, while I was still at Montgomery's mansion, this was about to get weird. I caught Stephen stealing food. I chased him around, and we both ended up in a small closet tightly pressed against each other. Inside that closet, we both felt the mate bond. A few days later, I was sold off to this pack's alpha, thinking it was some rich brat or an old man, only to find out it was Stephen. The only problem was that he had no memory of us meeting or even feeling the mate bond, I explained. Both Marie's and Clarabelle's jaws dropped in shock. You mean you've been hiding all that, all this time? We have to get this information to Christine as soon as we can, Marie said. Where were you two headed just now? I asked. We were actually going to the city market to get supplies for our room. We've run out of a lot of stuff. And this is the only chance we get to replenish it, Clarabelle answered. All right then. I'll come with you guys, I said. And I followed both of them back the way I came. As we walked through the rose garden around the main building, we saw Alpha Stephen a short distance from us, sniffing one of the flowers. He asked the other two girls to excuse us, and staring into his eyes, I thought I was finally going to be thrown out for my extreme clumsiness these past few days. He asked you to be his personal assistant, Clarabelle exclaimed, placing her palms on her head. Assistant is a strong word. I think Gregory already has that covered. I am still a maid. I am just going to be working specifically for him from now on, I answered. That is the highest rank a maid in his mansion has ever gotten. You think he has finally remembered the mate bond? Clarabelle asked. Well, it doesn't seem like it, I answered. From what you told us, the Stephen you met before you came here tried to steal food and had the aura of an Omega. But this Stephen is an Alpha who is not only rich but feared across the globe by every other Alpha. They're like two completely different people, Marie deduced. I am honestly considering the possibility that he has a double personality. One of them has felt the mate bond, but the other hasn't. They do not hold the memories of each other and live completely different lives, I said. That may be true. But there is the fact that no one in the mansion has ever heard the Alpha go out of those gates. We all simply believe the entire Mortimer family can never step through those gates for some reason, Marie said. Yeah, no one but me, I replied. Both Marie and Clarabelle stopped walking. You've seen the Alpha go out the gates? Marie asked. Yeah. It was by accident, though. He was behaving really strangely that day, so I decided to follow him to see what he was up to. When he got in front of the gates, he stopped and kept on staring at them. I couldn't see it clearly, but his face was filled with fear and his heart beat rapidly. As he finally pushed the gates open and stepped out, I took a peek through the gap and saw something I'd never seen before. It had a demonic aura and kept on smiling. Ever since that day I've been really out of it, I explained. Whoa! This is getting interesting, Marie said. We rushed through the market, collecting all the things we needed to buy. We moved from island to island, selecting the best of the items until we were finally done. This was a human store, so we couldn't get a lot of food from it. We walked over to the front desk to make our payment after we were done. Please, I would like to purchase this hat for my little sister. The wind blew hers away. A male voice sounded beside me. My eyes widened as I caught his scent. I slowly turned to my right to confirm if it was who I thought it was. And standing before me once again was the Omega Steven I met at my old home. All 5 of us stood outside the store quietly. I and the other 2 girls who came with me faced the ground. When I told them my story and how I met Steven, I could see on their faces that they were skeptical, as it was something unbelievable. But now, they were able to witness it for themselves. Thank you for paying for the things we bought, my lord, Clarabelle said, her voice shaking a little. It is no problem. I thought it would be a nice gesture to my friend Gabriella, since we only saw each other once and I vanished into the air. Steven replied with a smile. Steven turned to me and asked, "Why do your friends keep calling me their lord?" "It is getting a bit uncomfortable," he said. It is just their way of showing appreciation." "They're really grateful for your assistance," I replied, then turned back to Marie and Clarabelle. "Could you 2 please head back to the mansion to confirm if the Alpha is still there?" "I would really like to make my theory official," I said with a smile. Both of them nodded, staring at Steven, then walked away silently. Immediately they were out of sight, and I slammed my fist into Steven's stomach. "Ow, what was that for?" he asked, groaning in pain. "That is for not coming back to see me after we met at the Montgomery mansion," I said, then slammed my palm into his forehead. He fell to the ground, and I yelled, "That is for getting all romantic with that other girl and making me all depressed. What are you even talking about?" "What other girl?" he asked as he got up from the ground. "Never mind. It doesn't really matter at this point," I said, pushing out a sigh. He stood up straight and smiled at me. "I don't know what that was all about, but fixing 2 and 2 together, I can tell you really miss me. So, I am sorry for all the pain I've caused you in my absence," he said. My face grew a little pink as he spoke. I turned away from him and murmured to myself, "I never said I missed you." "What was that?" Steven asked, and I yelled, "Leave me alone." The little girl who stood beside him giggled a little, and I turned to her. "You are the little girl I saw in the forest during the hunt. That must mean Steven was the wolf." "I knew his eyes were familiar," I said, staring at her. "Yeah, I sort of sensed you were in danger. So we rushed there to help. I didn't want to shift into my human form because Margaret here thought it wasn't the right time yet," Steven explained. I turned back to the little girl and said, "You are one strange little girl, aren't you, Margaret?" As Steven called her, smiled and curtsied. "Where are you guys off to now?" I asked, not really sure. "Wherever the wind blows, I guess. Every time I wake up, I always have this urge to go on an adventure. It is kind of my thing," Steven answered. "Is that how you ended up in Montgomery's mansion?" I asked. "Nope, I was hungry. I saw a bunch of fancy people walking into a party, and I followed. It is the way of Steven," he replied. "And where was little Margaret when all that was happening?" I inquired. "I am not really sure. Margaret shows up and vanishes whenever she pleases. We're like magnets that can never truly be separated. We always find each other again, no matter where we go," Steven explained. We both suddenly went quiet. Even though we wanted to see each other so badly, just a few words in, and we had already run out of things to say. I stared at the marble road before us with chariots and cars passing by. Stephen and Gabriella. Little Margaret suddenly said. We both turned to her, and I wondered what strange thing she was about to say again. Her eyes were fixed on the road, but she spoke as if she saw more than what was in front of her. Your story has finally begun from this point. The truth about your beings is finally going to start being revealed before your very eyes. And memories thought to be forgotten will return. A series of events that will lead to each part of those memories being unlocked will unfold, and a fire thought to be dead will once again burn. All curses shall be broken, and all promises made will be kept. You two are not the only important ones in this story. Don't you forget. She spoke as if reciting a poem. She turned to me, her eyes glowing a bright green color, and concluded, Gabriella, you have work to do. But do not worry. In this long journey back to the beginning and toward the end, I will be your guide. Her eyes went back to normal, and she yelled, acting like the little girl she was again. The fair, Stephen, take me to the fair. I want to go win some prizes. Stephen lifted her off the ground and placed her on his shoulder. I am sorry if she scared you a little with her creepy words there. She does that to me sometimes. I am already used to it, Stephen said, turning to me. It is okay. I am not creeped out at all, I replied. You want to come with us? We would love the extra company, Stephen said. Well, I don't have anything to do for the rest of the day. All right, I'll come with you, I replied with a smile, and I followed them to the city's fair. The fair only came to the city of Willowcrest once a year, and every time it did, the night sky was always filled with beautiful colors and lights. We went from booth to booth, playing games and singing songs we never even knew existed. For the first time in my life, I had true fun with someone who really understood me. Someone I was always meant to meet, and for the rest of that day, I felt free. After a long day, we both sat on a green field. Margaret chased the beautiful fireflies around, and a cold wind blew through the tall glasses, causing a chill through my entire body. Stephen noticed me shivering, and quickly took off his jacket and placed it around me to keep me warm. I turned to him, stared for a moment, then turned away. Stephen, I said softly, and he turned to me. Before I met you in that kitchen, my life was always such a blur. Nothing seemed right. I felt like I would spend the rest of my days in a place where I was hated and die a miserable old woman. But as I chased you through those passages, I felt a rush of adrenaline pump through my blood, like I was a child again, and an excitement I thought was gone. I didn't finish my sentence when a teardrop rolled down my left cheek. I just want to confirm you felt it too. I turned to him and completed the question with a lump in my throat. Right? Stephen suddenly started to draw his face closer to mine. My heartbeat got louder and faster, and the gaps between my breaths slowly decreased. As he got to a certain distance from me, I closed my eyes. As our lips touched, I could hear that song playing again. The one we danced to in my dream. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but the feeling it put in my heart was undeniably beautiful. Wait, so he will be permanently unable to go into the mansion if he fails to go in before midnight? I asked. Yes. That is why I have to get him back here every night before it is too late. He gets all stiff as soon as he is in front of the gate, so I just push him in. Margaret replied, skipping from side to side. We were headed back to the mansion late at night when Margaret called me forward to give me that little piece of information. I walked back to meet Stephen and stood beside him. Our palms met each other, and we both locked fingers. It is too bad we won't be able to see each other for a while. I was really hoping to spend more time with you, Stephen said. I got a bit confused. I knew that Alpha Stephen always found it hard to leave the mansion, but that didn't necessarily mean I and this side of him wouldn't be seeing each other again. I was pretty sure he'd leave the mansion again eventually. What exactly do you mean? I asked. It is one of Margaret's creepy talks. She said, the moment you figure things out, I won't be able to wake up anymore. Not until a promise is kept and a curse is broken. I don't know what all that means. But if she thinks it is what is best, I can't challenge her, Stephen replied. Yeah, I wanted to ask. Why do you follow her every order? You are way older than her, I asked. It is really not a matter of who is older than who. When I opened my eyes for the first time, she was standing right there. She knew about the world more than I did, and provided me with food when I got hungry. I may have been older, but mentally, I was like a newborn. Stephen replied. It is that complicated, I said. We were finally a short distance from the gate. I stopped walking and held Stephen's hand. What is it? He asked. And before he realized it, my arms were already around his torso, holding him tightly with my cheek pressed against his chest. If we're not going to be seeing each other, then I want this feeling to at least last for a long time. The moment I step through those gates, my life will become what it once was, and I won't be able to hold you like this anymore. So, don't forget me, I said. Stephen wrapped his arms around me and replied softly. Don't worry, you've survived for so long even without me in your life. I am sure you'll be just fine. After he said that, his entire body went stiff. Stephen, I called, but there was no reply. I let go of him and stepped back. To my surprise, he has already gone completely wood, like and had no reaction to everything I did. It is time. I have to take him in now. You go in first, so it will look like you were always inside the mansion. I'll handle things from here, Margaret said. But what about you? Where do you go after you've put him inside? I asked. No. I roam around the mansion until he comes out again, which in this case won't be until your job is done, she replied. I nodded in response, turned around, and walked through the gates, my head facing the ground. Immediately after I stepped through, I walked over to some bushes and stood behind them, waiting to see what would happen next. After waiting for a few moments, I saw Stephen levitate into the mansion. His entire body was still stiff, but he was enveloped in a bright green aura. As soon as he crossed the boundary between the outside world and inside the mansion, he fell to the ground, his eyes shut. He soon opened his eyes and groaned, placing his left palm on his head. It happened again. I guess I better give up trying to go outside, he said softly, and he got up from the ground. As he walked forward, I hurried to him and bowed. My lord, are you feeling all right? I asked. The shock, written all over his face on seeing me, told me he definitely didn't want anybody seeing him in his attempts to leave the mansion. What are you doing here? He asked. Sir, you made me your personal maid. I found you laying unconscious over here and tried to call for help. But there was no one close by to help me, so I decided to stay by you until you awakened. I am glad you are all right, I lied. All right, thank you. You should head back to your room. It is getting really late, he replied, then walked past me. I let out a sigh, watching him walk away. My day was finally over, and the happiness I enjoyed momentarily had gone with it. I tightened my fist and my brows furrowed. The fact that I wanted my happiness back again made me determined to figure out whatever was going on and cure him. But how was I supposed to start? My tight fist loosened, and my face relaxed. Margaret didn't leave me with any clues. She didn't even tell me where to start. I thought to myself as I watched Stephen open the door to the mansion. As he pulled the door open and stepped in, my eyes met those of the brick wall lady Cortana. The way she stared at me, I wondered if she could actually see me. Since her duty was always to watch the gates, maybe she saw right through everything else. I waved my palm at her, and as the doors shut, I remembered something. You two are not the only important ones in this story. Don't you forget. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. I was told there was an old witch who visited the mansion many years ago. Maybe, just maybe, there is someone who was around when it happened. I'll ask Christine, I thought to myself. It seems to me like you had a really fun day, Marie said, her lips curving into a smirk. Of course I did, but there was a lot of strange stuff that came with it. I replied. What strange stuff? Clarabelle asked. Firstly, there is the fact that my mate has a double personality, and now I have the job of fixing him. Secondly, there was the little girl who said some weird stuff about a curse and a promise. Honestly, I didn't quite understand all of it, but somehow I am supposed to unlock memories that'll somehow lead to the curse breaking, I replied. Honestly, when you said that stuff to us about the Alpha being your mate, I was a little skeptical. But now, Clarabelle said, yeah. It has been years, and no one has ever seen the Alpha step out of the gates. We all thought he just couldn't, but you saw him do it in your first few weeks. That is crazy. It is probably all that little girl's plan, Marie added. Her plan? You think she manipulated the events that have led us to this point? I asked. Well, that is a bit of a stretch, but she says a lot of weird and mysterious stuff. So it is a possibility, Marie replied. We all went silent again. And I turned to face the ground. I raised my head back up to look at Christine and found her sitting quietly, staring at her mirror. What do you think, Christine? I asked. Christine's head dropped. I ask you to please do not get yourself involved with all of this. Forget about the Alpha and focus on your job. If you continue on this path, you might just get yourself and all of us hurt. So I beg of you, stop it, she said. She got up from where she sat and walked over to her bed. Then laid on it and went to sleep. Okay. That was very sudden, Mary said, breaking the silence that had filled the room after Christine spoke. I have to go to sleep now. You two should get to sleep too. There is a lot of work to do tomorrow, I said, and laid down flat on my bed, facing the ceiling. Marie blew out the candles in the room, and both she and Clarabelle went to sleep. As I stared at the ceiling, I wondered if Christine was right. Maybe trying to figure this out wasn't such a good idea. What if I caused an even greater problem? They had been living peacefully until now, and the last thing I wanted was to ruin that. But was all that really worth giving up on? Stephen, my eyelids soon started to hurt, and I couldn't hold them open any longer. They finally closed, and in no time, I was back in the world of dreams. I found myself falling into a void of darkness again. After falling for a few minutes, I hit the ground, and a large amount of yellow dust filled the air. The sky was covered in all sorts of colors. And that beautiful music played in the background. But he was nowhere to be found. I turned from right to left, looking for my dance partner, but came to the realization that I was alone. The beautiful sounds suddenly started coming from one direction. I turned toward it, and the only person I could see was that little girl. Her entire body was green, and she held a green violin in her hand, playing that beautiful tune. I walked over to her and sat before her. I tried to speak, but words wouldn't come out. The little girl put down her violin, then said softly, "Find the secrets of the missing page within the perforations of the brick wall." Immediately after she said this, she vanished in a puff of green smoke, and I was suddenly sent flying back into the dark void. My eyelids swung open, and I breathed heavily as I sat back up. How'd? When? Perforations of the brick wall? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Clarabelle asked as we walked, pushing a large wooden container containing a bunch of dirty clothes from the warrior wolves. How am I supposed to know? She didn't even let me ask any questions. I answered with a look of worry on my face. I and my little sister used to play games like this. We would create dumb rhyming riddles that had to do with everyday life, but we made them so vague that the readers would not be able to guess them, Marie said. She was a lot more talkative than usual. So, you are saying that the task is actually really something I see and or do every day? I asked. Most riddles are like that. I bet it is just to mess with your brain, Marie said. Yeah. But if she is going to be the one to throw me all the clues, why not just tell me exactly what to do, so I can fix everything once and for all? I asked. Well, she probably wants you to go through a lot of things along the way. Things that'll probably bring you and the Alpha closer or change you forever. Marie speculated. Change me? But I am fine the way I am, I said. That is what you think. But maybe she sees more than your eyes can, more than our eyes can. And don't forget that car accident in the first dream you told us about. You still don't know what that one means, Clarabelle said. And she did also say memories thought to be forgotten would return. Married added, True. Let's just focus on what is ahead. I can figure that out later. As we got to a junction between two passages, I turned to take the one that led to the Alpha room. Now that I was his personal maid, I had to report to his room every morning to see if he had any jobs for me. I waved my friends goodbye and continued through the passage until I got to his door. I was about to knock when I heard Gregory's voice. The Alpha of the Darkhound Pack sent a message, my lord. What did it say? Alpha Stephen asked. It says that one of the Alphas that rejected your proposal is planning to attack them. They request your assistance, Gregory answered. My eyes widened. As I heard this, tell them, they're on their own, Stephen answered. After they had finished their conversation, I knocked on the door and stepped away from it. After a few seconds, Alpha Stephen's voice sounded. Come in. It is open, he said. I gently pushed the door open and walked into the room, my head hanging low and my heart filled with worry and fear. Good morning, my lord. I've come to assist you with whatever chore you may have for me today, I said, bowing a little. He remained silent for a few seconds, then said, Raise your head. I raised my head and stared directly into his eyes, waiting to see what he was going to do or say to me. You didn't get quite enough sleep last night, did you? He asked. Well, whether I got the right amount of sleep last night shouldn't matter. What matters is that I am here and ready to work, I said, and Gregory, who was standing on the right side of the Alpha desk, smiled. We're going to be doing a lot of paperwork today. I don't want you to fall asleep during the job, Stephen said, but sir, I have no experience in such work. I hadn't completed my sentence when Stephen interrupted. Don't worry, I'll guide you through it myself. I would have asked Gregory, but he is going to be out of the mansion for a while. All right, my lord. I'd be happy to lend a hand, I said with a blank expression. Is something wrong? The sound of your heart beating is getting really annoying, Alpha Stephen asked. I didn't want to show him. I was worried about the Darkhound Pack being attacked, but it seemed he was already onto me. I had to find a way to make him help the pack. I couldn't let any harm come to the people I cared about there. This personality was one who didn't like to waste time or resources. As long as the matter didn't affect his pack, he wouldn't get involved in any way, no matter how I pleaded. So, in order to make him help the Darkhound Pack, I had to find a way to make him see that helping them would be beneficial to him. My lord, forgive my eavesdropping. But I happened to hear your conversation with Gregory earlier about the Darkhound Pack getting attacked by an opposing pack, I said. Yes. I am sorry you had to hear that. I know you must feel very devastated, but I assure you your pack will be fine. The Alphaking has handled more difficult situations, Stephen said. On the contrary, my lord, I am not worried because I have loved ones there. I am worried because you've decided not to lend a hand. And that would only jeopardize your plans on merging all the packs, I said. Oh, why do you think so? He asked. Well, I heard from Gregory here that I was about to speak when I noticed Gregory gesturing for me to keep shut. I quickly corrected myself. From some of the other maids, you used the Dark Hound pack as your messenger to deliver your letters to all the packs. Now that they've asked for your help and you've refused, if they somehow survive the attack, they will take you as an enemy and claim they were actually the ones who wrote those letters. And they will gain control of all the other packs who have agreed to the merge. Gregory completed my sentence. Stephen fell on his seat's backrest. He had a look on his face, like he was considering the possibility of my theory coming to play. All right then. I'll put your theory into consideration. But if I were to actually believe that they would betray me like that, an easy fix would be to destroy them myself, Stephen said. My eyes widened in shock as he said that. But don't worry, even if you don't want to admit it, I know you came up with that theory because you have loved ones there. So I'll send some of my troops to assist them. You are a smart girl. I like that, Stephen said. My cheeks grew red as he said this. Thank you, sir, I replied. Maybe I was wrong about this side of him. Maybe he wasn't such a bad person after all. I beg to take my leave now, sire, Gregory said, bowing and exiting the room. Stephen got up from his seat and walked toward me. He stopped right in front of me and asked, When you saw me at the gates last night, was it open or closed? It was open, my lord, I replied, staring at the ground. After so many years and so many generations, you are the first to see a Mortimer lying unconscious at the gates. So I am curious. Do you see it too? The demonic being standing on the other side? He asked. I was very shocked by his question. I always thought this was a secret, only the Mortimers were allowed to know. The fact he was asking a mere maid such as myself was very strange. I stuttered. Don't lie to me, Gabriella. I can tell from the sound of your heartbeat, the flow of blood through your veins, and even the dilation of your pupils. Speak, Stephen said, stepping a little closer to me. I could feel my breath getting faster and heavier. Yes, my lord. Yes, I did. But I can only see it when you are standing close to the gates and when you open it yourself, I replied. Stephen remained silent for a moment, then said, walking away from me, I don't know if you've heard, but every Mortimer after my great-grandfather has never been able to step out of the gates, not because we don't want to, but because there is something out there stopping us. Well, there must be a way to get rid of it, right? I asked. Not sure. I've been too busy to do any research. That aside, earlier I mentioned Gregory would be out of the mansion for a while. It is because one of the council members has died, and we're expected to show our condolences, he said. What does that have to do with a mere maid? I asked. You met one of the council members during the party in the mansion. Am I right? He asked. No. The only guest I actually spoke to was a woman who said she came with a friend who was invited, I replied. That woman, Gabriella, was Lady Anaya Dragnon. The head of the Council of Pax, Stephen said. My eyes widened in shock as I heard this. Oh my goodness, you had a conversation with the head of the council and didn't even know it. Did she remove her veil? Clarabelle said it, with a look of surprise on her face. Her veil? What is that? I asked. Well, all the council members have veils on. The faces you see on them aren't their true faces. Revealing their faces carelessly would put them in real danger. Only the members of the council know the faces of other members, Clarabelle replied. Oh, well, I couldn't really tell if she was on a veil or not, I said. But you saw the face Lady Anaya is known by, and since the Alphas confirmed it, it must have been her, Maria said. Yeah. Now I feel even more horrible for pouring wine on her dress. What if she gets me killed? I said, placing my palms over my face. Oh, common, from what you told us. I am pretty sure she now considers you a friend. Maybe she'll even invite you to her home one day, Marie said. Oh, that is right. She gave me a card with her address on it. She said I could come visit any time I was free. I don't really know what to do with it though, I said, pulling out the card from a pocket in my apron. Oh my. That is insane. Now we have a friend who is connected to one of the most important women in the history of important women. So when are you taking us to meet her? Clarabelle asked. Taking you to meet her. I haven't even had enough time to think about the things going on in my life right now. Besides, it is not like the Alpha would let me go all the way to another city to potentially anger the one person who can put his reign in jeopardy, I replied. Ugh. You are such a boring person, Gabriella, Maria said. Sorry for being boring, Maria. But I like and would like to keep the peace and quiet I have right now. I replied to her, shutting my eyes. I opened my eyes and turned to Christine. She was quiet again, staring at her mirror, although she had a blank expression on her face. Staring at her, I read all sorts of emotions in her eyes, from anger to sadness and more I couldn't name. I got worried. Something was definitely going on with her, but she didn't want to tell anyone. Christine, I called, and she turned to me. Is everything okay? You've been really quiet lately, and we're starting to get worried, I said. Oh, it is nothing. I am fine, I just feel a little under the weather, she replied with a smile I knew was completely fake. Howen. I and some other maids walked through the passages in the mansion very early in the morning. We were headed to one of the kitchens to prepare breakfast for everyone. Please check every single pipe and make sure it is all in order and do exactly what I asked you to do. A female voice sounded as we were about to make a turn. The moment we made the turn, the female turned toward us, and our eyes met. I felt my heart jump the moment I saw her face. It was the same woman I met on the balcony with Alpha Steven during the party. I quickly lowered my gaze to avoid staring for too long. As we walked past her, we bowed to greet her, and she stopped us. You there? The one with the unusually black eyes, she said. I wasn't sure if she was talking to me because I didn't really know the color of eyes the other maids had. So I kept my head down and said nothing. You may leave. Go start your work immediately, she said to the men she was previously talking to, and they all walked away. She walked toward us, and one by one, she started to tell the maids to leave. She sent off 4 maids, then stopped once she got to me. You. What is up with you? She asked, gesturing for the other maids behind me to leave. I don't understand that question, ma'am, I said nervously. Of all the other maids who have come and gone over the years, why did he choose you specifically to be his personal servant? She asked again. With all due respect, that is not a question you should be asking me, as I have no idea what goes on in the Alpha's mind. I am only his servant, and I do whatever he asks, I answered. She stared at me for a moment, then turned away and continued. My name is Evelyn Brooke. My family has been a very big supporter of the Mortimers for years, and both the Alpha and I have been friends since childhood. I know him like the back of my hand, and so I know he wouldn't just pick a lowly servant like you for no particular reason. She turned back to me and asked, So what is it that you have that every other maid in this mansion doesn't? Boobs, I murmured, staring at her incredibly flat chest. In my head, I imagined the idea of a portrait sitting on a wall-like surface. What? She asked, requesting clarity. These are all questions I don't have answers to. Again, only the Alpha knows what goes on in his head. I am no mind reader, I answered. Don't you get smart with me, maids who have crossed me have vanished like they never existed. Your case won't be any different, she said, leaning toward my face. She turned away from me again, then said, "The pipes that supply water to this mansion have a leak somewhere, and not all the rooms have received water in days. Judging from the number of rooms they have, I would say it is a very nasty leak. So, if you spot a leak somewhere in the mansion, please do not hesitate to let me know," she said. "Yes, madam," I replied, took a bow, and left to join the other girls. I and the maids who cooked today spent a total of 4 hours preparing enough food to serve all the maids and warrior wolves in the mansion. Because of the time it took, we had to wake up extremely early in the morning to start the preparation, so the maids would have something to eat by the time they woke up. After cooking, we would move the food to the cafeteria, where each maid and warrior wolf would come to take their meal. The alpha never ate in the cafeteria, and it was now my duty to personally serve his meal in his room. Holding the tray carrying his meal, I know he is at his door. After waiting a few seconds, his voice sounded. "Come in, it is open," he said. I gently pushed the door open and walked into the room as carefully as I could. Trying hard not to spill his food, I placed the meal on his desk and bowed, saying, "Good morning, my lord. Here is your meal. I'll take my leave now." I quickly turned around to leave, but as I approached the door, he stopped me. "Gabriella," he called. I turned around, facing the ground, and answered, "Yes, my lord, please, have a seat," he said. "But, my lord, I have to join the other maids in the cafeteria." "They need my help," I said. "There is more than enough maids to take your place. Besides, you are my personal maid, so your job is to answer directly to me." "Grab a seat," he said it in a stern tone. I pulled out a seat from his desk and sat on it quietly. He took the tray off the table and placed it on a stand, standing beside his bed, then started eating. I moved my eyes to my thighs, as I felt watching him eat was disrespectful. He noticed this and said, "Don't avert your eyes. I want you to watch me eat." I raised my head again to look at him, and I stared on until he was done. I quickly picked up the tray from the stool and bowed to him before turning around to leave. As I took a step forward, he said, "Sorry, I had to make you go through that. My father was always asking me to relate with the people of the mansion more often, as it would increase my allies and lessen my enemies." I turned around to face him again. I honestly did not mind it at all. It is my duty to serve you, no matter the task. Do you mind if I suggest something?" I asked. "Please, go ahead," he replied. "If you really want to relate more with your maids and warriors, I suggest joining them in the cafeteria once in a while. It is a place where everyone can come be themselves," I said. He thought for a moment, then said, "That doesn't sound like a bad idea. But next time, I would like to have breakfast with you again. But the only difference I want is you with your cutlery eating with me. A series of events will unfold, and memories thought to be forgotten will return. Memories thought to be forgotten will return. Memories." I breathed heavily as I jolted back into consciousness. I looked around the room, and it was empty. I felt a sharp pain in my head, then placed my right palm on the area and groaned softly. "What was that?" I asked in my thoughts. I got down from the bed, picked up my apron, and walked out of the door to resume my daily chores. As I stood in front of the door, I saw some other maids coming from my right. They laughed and talked about the matters of the mansion and how hard they'd worked the previous day. I didn't know everyone in the mansion yet, so their faces were new to me. "Good morning," I greeted, but they didn't reply. They walked past me like I wasn't there. This was a surprise to me because no maid had ever done it before. I decided to ignore it since it probably didn't matter. I walked through the passages, heading to the Alpha's room to see what chores he had for me today. I was particularly excited because I would be having breakfast privately with him today. I walked down the passage that led directly to his office, fixing my hair and checking my uniform for any blemishes. As I got in front of the door, I raised my hand to knock. Please keep this a secret. No one must know this exists. Take it as far as you can and hide it where no one can find it. Destroying it isn't an option. A strange, bold voice I had never heard before sounded. My Alpha, this is quite the task you've given me. I am just an ordinary Omega wolf in your pack. Why me? Another voice sounded. The old woman has asked for a watcher. And that watcher, she says, must come from your family. In other words, you are the only one I can trust with this. Any other person will try to sell it or use it to destroy me and my pack. But you, I know I can trust you. The previous voice replied. This piece of paper holds secrets that would mean the end of the werewolf world as we know it. I will guard it with my life, the second voice said. After a few seconds, the handle of the door twisted. I stepped back, waiting to see who would come out of the room. A thin but muscular man with a mustache came out first. He wore normal clothes, and his hair was a little messed up. After he stepped out, the second man followed. My eyes widened in shock as I saw his face. The memory of me and Gregory walking through a gallery that contained different large portraits came to my head. And I could remember the man's face from one of them. This was Stephen's grandfather, staring at him. I knew this definitely wasn't real. I waved my hand around, but he didn't respond. It was then that I figured that none of them could see me. I started to breathe heavily, my heart slowly filling with fear as I watched both of them walk away. I am not sure why the old hag requested a watcher, but she knows best. We cannot defy her, Stephen's grandfather said. Yes. I'll see to it that my soon-to-be-born child will begin training as soon as he is able to shift, his friend replied. Up until this point, I still couldn't understand what they were talking about. The talk about the old woman and a watcher was all so confusing. Suddenly, the walls and floors started to move. Somehow, I levitated off the ground, and the entire house started to disappear piece by piece. Soon, the entire house was gone, and I was out on a stormy night. I dropped to the ground again, and raised my hand to prevent particles being carried by the windstorm from entering my eyes. I could tell this was a part of Willowcrest City, but it looked a lot older. The windstorm got louder and stronger, and I could feel my hair pulling me back. I noticed a man on his knees surrounded by a pool of blood. It was the same man who was talking to Stephen's grandfather a second ago, and lying near him was another man who was probably dead. His entire body was drenched in rainwater. And he remained quiet. After a few seconds, he raised his head and yelled, Moon Goddess! Moon Goddess! I have failed my Alpha, and I am about to pay for it with my life. Please grant me this last wish. Keep his secret safe, he said with a sad voice. Soon after he said that, something that looked like small shreds of paper, enveloped in purple light, rose out of his hand and flew off. After watching this happen, the wind got extremely powerful and finally pulled me off my feet. My eyes opened up again. As they did, I could see Christine, Maria, and Clarabelle sitting around me. You blacked out completely, didn't you? Are you feeling all right? Clarabelle asked. Why? You can see me, I asked. Of course we can. Well, except for Marie, Clarabelle said. You know I can hear you, right? Marie said, turning to her. You don't know how glad I am to hear your voices again. How long was I out? I asked. 3 days, Christine replied. What? It has been 3 days already, I asked, completely shocked. Yeah. And a lot of things have happened since you blacked out, Marie said. What do you mean? I asked. Well, when you blacked out, some of the maids started falling sick. On the second day, All the maids and warrior wolves had already become sick with an unknown disease. "What?" I said softly, a look of surprise and worry growing on my face. 4 days ago. Lady Anaya's eyes slowly opened up. She placed her left palm on her head and groaned softly as she could feel a slight headache coming up. "She is awake," one of the maids said as she rushed through the curtains that surrounded Anaya's bed. "My lady, are you all right?" she asked, sitting beside her and placing her palms on Anaya's shoulders. "I think so." "What happened?" Anaya asked. Edith walked through the curtains and replied, "You blacked out at the accident scene, possibly from the shock of Marvin and his family's deaths." "Oh," Anaya said, letting out a sigh. "I can't believe Marvin and his entire family are gone. He was my biggest supporter after my husband died. I really hope they find favor with the moon goddess," Anaya continued. She got up from her bed and headed for the bathroom, the maids following slowly behind her. "My lady, Maldruid sent a message. He says, a meeting should be held immediately when you awaken. The council needs to mourn the loss of a member together," Edith said. "I completely understand. I'll get ready quickly and head to the meeting hall," Anaya responded. After a few hours, Anaya got out of the bathroom, fully prepared for the day. She wore a golden yellow sunflower dress and had yellow gloves on. Her raven black hair was packed in a long ponytail, and she wore a diamond necklace. She and her maids walked out of her bedroom and headed toward a chariot that would take them to the meeting hall. Before Anaya could step in, one of her guards rushed forward. "Lady Anaya, Beta Gregory from Willow Crest's Dark Moon Pack has come to see you," he said, bowing his head slightly. "Oh, where is he?" Anaya asked. She had a slightly surprised look on her face as she wasn't expecting any early visitors. The guard rushed back to the gates and quickly opened them. The chariot that carried Gregory rode into the compound and stopped beside Anaya's chariot. Gregory stepped out of the chariot, then bowed to Lady Anaya. "My lady, the Alpha of Willow Crest, has sent me to offer mine and his condolences for the loss of one of the most important council members. He has also asked me to assist in the investigations to see if it was really an accident or a murder." Gregory spoke. "Why? That is very nice of him. Actually, I was on my way out to a meeting with the rest of the council. I hope you don't mind joining us," Anaya asked. "I would be happy to, my lady," Gregory replied, his head still down. Anaya got into her chariot, and as Gregory was about to get into his, he noticed something flying toward them. A thin line of black smoke formed along the object's path as it flew through the air at high speeds. Gregory's eyes widened as he saw it. As it got closer, Gregory realized it was an arrow headed directly for Anaya's head. Before the arrow could reach him, Gregory caught it with his right hand. Even after he had caught it, the arrow still kept trying to force its way to Anaya, slowly freeing itself from Gregory's grip by burning his hand. Lady Anaya turned around, and her eyes widened as she saw Gregory struggling. Gregory's hand slowly turned black, and as the pain intensified, his eyes turned bright blue, and his canines grew into fangs. He growled loudly until he was finally able to snap the arrow in two. Deactivating it, he dropped the pieces of the arrow on the ground and held his right hand tightly. "Oh my, are you all right?" Anaya asked, placing her arms around Gregory. "Yes, my lady, you need to head inside." "I think someone might be after your life," Gregory struggled to say. Lady Anaya and the maids quickly rushed Gregory back into the house. Both the warrior wolves that came with Gregory and Anaya's guards got ready in case another attack came. Why? The entire meeting hall was quiet. All the members of the council stared at their desks silently, waiting for their heads to step in. "I can't believe she is late," Maldruid said angrily, breaking the silence. "Calm down, Maldruid," I am pretty sure she must have run into some problems along the way. You know, the job of a leader requires more than just attending meetings. Another female council member said she had golden yellow hair and was the youngest among them all. But this is a meeting concerning the death of a council member and a friend. The head of the council should be the first one in this hall. Maldruid continued his ranting. Maldruid, have you lost your senses? Even if she is not in the room, at least show some respect for her position. You are lucky she didn't have you hanged for the atrocity you committed at the last meeting. The female spoke again, and that is the reason I believe she is too weak to run the council. She has too much of a pure heart and will find it difficult to punish the wrongdoers. What we need is a leader who will govern with an iron fist, Maldruid said. What in the world are you thinking? The female was about to speak when Anaya's voice sounded, He is right, Katrina. They all turned in the direction of her voice and saw her standing at the door with Gregory by her side. Anaya casually walked to her desk, Gregory following behind her quietly. Anaya sat at her desk and let out a sigh. It has come to my knowledge that the death of Marvin and his family wasn't actually an accident. It was in fact a murder, Anaya said with a blank expression on her face. What do you mean? One of the other council members asked. After inspecting his car, it was noticed that there was fuel and brake fluid leakage the moment he started the car. Someone must have tampered with it the night before, knowing he was going to be off somewhere with his family the next day, Anaya explained, staring at her desk. What are you insinuating, my lady? Another council member asked. Anaya remained quiet for a moment, her chin resting on the back of her hands and her eyes carrying zero emotions, then said, Earlier today, an attempt to take my life was made. A cursed arrow was sent to stab me, but fortunately Gregory from the Dark Moon Pack was able to stop it. His hand was badly injured, so I had to take my time to treat him. During this time, we came up with quite a few assumptions, but one in particular was the most plausible. Anaya went quiet again for a few more seconds, then continued. Only the council members know the real faces of the other council members. Every other person would see a veil. For a curse arrow to work, you'd have to give it a name while visualizing the person's face in your mind. Give it a name. Carrying the wrong face in your mind won't work. This means the person who sent the cursed arrow is in fact a council member. I suspect someone among you is trying to kill me and all my supporters. Anaya turned to Maldruid. You are awfully quiet today, Maldruid. What is wrong? You don't feel like mouthing off, she asked. On the contrary. Why blame it on someone in the council when you yourself gave away your true face to a maid at the Mortimer mansion? For all we know, she could be a spy there and see an opportunity to kill you and everyone you relate to, Maldruid said. Oh, so you do feel like mouthing off. Well, this was a young girl who was confused and overworked. She actually spilled wine on me, and that is how we met. Unlike you, I can see the good in people. I know who and who not to trust. So shut your mouth before I declare you the culprit, Anaya said. For those who are guilty, await your punishment. My style of justice is slow and painful, and for those who are innocent, I wish you safety until the culprit is caught. Meeting dismissed. Dismissed? We have to talk about selecting a new member to take Marvin's place, Maldruid said again. I said, main eating dismissed. There will be no selection until the criminal falls out. Anaya yelled angrily, her eyes glowing bright orange and her teeth growing into fangs. She got up from her seat and marched out of the hall. Gregory was shocked by her outburst. He turned to her desk and noticed holes her nails had dug into. This wasn't just any kind of desk. This was a thick slab of iron. Katrina, one of the council members, turned to Maldruid saying with a smirk, You know you still have a chance to pack your bags and run away. Right? Once Anaya gets like this, heads are going to roll. Anaya walked away from the entrance of the hall. Her face edged with anger, and Gregory immediately followed behind her. He could feel an intense aura rising from her body, signifying that she was in no food for chit-chat all his life. He thought the council members were just normal wolves given underserved high rankings. He never imagined the immense power that flowed through their bodies. Standing in the hall with her, he felt all the energy in his legs drain out the moment she unleashed a percentage of the beast within her. Anaya stopped in front of her chariot and let out a sigh. Gravity could notice the large aura surrounding her slowly vanish. As the aura vanished completely, Anaya turned to Gregory with a smile on her face. Sorry about my outburst earlier. Council meetings can be a little stressful. Now, how do you suggest we find our culprit? She asked. Firstly, I totally understand your rage. It is quite heartbreaking to find out the people you trust the most have turned against you. Gregory didn't finish his sentence when Anaya interrupted him. Trust the most. Oh, please, trusting that bunch would be the biggest mistake anyone would ever make. Even my husband was very careful around them, especially Muldruid. They're all power-hungry and willing to do anything for the position of head, but unlike the others, Muldruid doesn't hesitate to display his foolishness before me. So, you suspect him the most? Gregory asked. Anaya looked up to the sky with an expression like she was deep in thought. She looked back down and answered, Number, what do you mean, no? He is clearly the one with the most motive. I am sure a round of torture will get the truth out of him, Gregory said. Anaya laughed. Oh, common Gregory, you are a warrior wolf to one of the greatest alphas in history. You should know better, she said. My apologies, Lady Anaya. I just got a little excited. Please let me hear your reasons for rulling him out of the suspects, Gregory said softly. Well, I've kept an eye on the other council members for a while now. Muldruid may be quite the character. He is a womanizer, an abusive husband, and a very annoying person in general. But the one thing he is incapable of is breaking the rules of the council when it comes to choosing a head. He is the kind of person who would want to become the right leader. Plus, he is incapable of committing murder. His childhood was filled with a lot of traumatic memories that caused him to lose his ability to hunt. Because of that, he dedicated his life to politics and rose until he became one of the council members. This is why he is so adamant on removing me. He believes someone like me who didn't put in any effort the way he did doesn't deserve the position of head, Anaya explained. Well, we must consider the possibility of him hiring someone to do the dirty job for him, Gregory suggested. No. He couldn't have done that either. Like I said before, he is a stickler for traditions. He believes getting to the top requires hard work and would refuse shortcuts even when offered to him on a golden platter. I know because I've seen it happen, Anaya replied. Wow. You speak so highly of someone who has no respect for you whatsoever, Gregory said. Whether he respects me or not is his business. The fact that he keeps to his words and obeys the rules is enough for me to ignore his numerous wrongdoings, including sleeping around behind his wife's back, Anaya replied. So, after him, who is your next suspect? Gregory asked. Let's head back to my house first. We couldn't possibly discuss that in a place like this. As they say, the walls have ears. Anaya concluded with a smirk and proceeded into her chariot. Gregory got into his and sat quietly in it. Come to think of it, Lady Anaya never went through any rigorous training or political rise to become the head of the council. Her husband just put her there before he died. How in the world did she get that powerful? The only being who can match her level of power is an alpha werewolf. Gregory thought to himself, staring at her as her chariot drove off. Tao Chen. So, now that we're here, what would you like to have? Anaya asked, sitting with Gregory in her living room. Oh, just water would be fine, thank you, Gregory replied. Anaya called for one of her maids and asked them to bring some water for Gregory and for herself. So, you've ruled out Maldruid. Who then do you suspect the most? Gregory asked. There were 10 council members in total, one of us has died, and now only 9 are left. Maldruid is definitely not a part of this scheme, but I can't say the same for the others. So, we're going to play a little game with each of them to test their intelligence. Our first test subject will be Maldruid, Anaya explained. I thought Maldruid wasn't going to be a part of this, Gregory said, taking a sip from his cup of water. Well, yes. But I need to know how an innocent person would react to the test so I know what to expect from the others, Anaya said. Then, what will this game be like? Gregory asked. Good question. We're going to write an anonymous letter to Maldruid. The letter will accuse Maldruid and threaten to reveal his secrets to the council head if he refuses to meet the sender's demands. If he is innocent, he'll trash the letter and forget it exists. If he isn't, his entire attitude will change. He'll start to worry, and he will lose focus on everything around him. At first, he'll doubt what the sender actually knows, and that will further disrupt his psyche. During this period, we'll send him more letters containing his letter between him and all the women he has slept with behind his wife's back, plugging him further into a mental breakdown. In the end, he'll agree to meet, and we'll nab him, Anaya explained. Gregory stared at Anaya with shock on his face. Who is she? Where did the nice Anaya go? He asked in his head, as he couldn't believe his ears. Although Maldruid is innocent, I doubt this plan would work on someone as cunning as our culprit. No one knows the true face of a council member, and only the alphas know their actual locations. So an outsider couldn't possibly send the letter. After playing with Maldruid by threatening to reveal his secrets, we'll have him deliver new letters himself. But this time, the letters will say something only the culprit will understand. This will force the culprit to meet Maldruid secretly. And from there we can know who it is, Anaya said. But what if the culprit sends someone else to do the meeting? Gregory asked. No, they won't. To keep the secret from getting out, they would have to do it themselves, Anaya replied. And what, exactly, would this letter say? How about fire black soaring through the sky, unbreakable cursed steel, aiming for the heart? Nice choice, Anaya said. Ooh. The culprit would immediately realize Maldruid is talking about the arrow. The other council members may realize the same thing, but won't pay attention to it because they don't want to get involved with the killer. The killer, on the other hand, would try to cover his tracks by approaching Maldruid to shut him up. Gregory said, his lips curving into a smile. Precisely. We'll have our culprit in no time. But let's think of ways this could go wrong, Anaya said. Yeah, like, what if the culprit just sends another cursed arrow to kill Maldruid? Gregory said, that is surely a possibility. But I am sure the culprit thinks I believe Maldruid is the culprit, so killing him now would be a dumb move as it would move my attention to the rest of the council, putting the real culprit in danger. I am sure he or she wouldn't want that. In fact, after receiving the letter from Maldruid, the culprit would actually want to partner up with him and later frame him. Since he has the most motive, the rest of the council will agree to him being the criminal, and I would have no choice but to agree as well. This is how our culprit is thinking currently, and this is the real reason I chose Maldruid to be our first test subject. Either this woman was a criminal before, or she is extremely brilliant. Gregory thought to himself, you thought this whole thing through on our way back here, didn't you? Gregory asked, a look of shock edged on his face. Well, I've been planning to use Maldruid as a pawn for a while now, and this is the perfect opportunity. Let's just hope the culprit isn't dumb enough to kill Maldruid before the game even starts, Anaya said, placing one of her legs over the other. Your cursed arrow failed. The voice of a young male sounded from inside an old wooden box. bulging deep inside the forest. No, it didn't. You just used it at the wrong time. An old man answered, striking a piece of metal with his heavy mallet. I don't have time for games. I need to take control of the council before it is too late. The male spoke again. He had a dark cloak on and carried a large bag around his shoulder. What are you so worried about anyway? The leader of the council is a fine woman who can handle any task placed before her. The old blacksmith said, still hammering the metal. That may be true. But the one thing she can't handle is what is coming. It is so dangerous that it could end werewolf kind forever. Lady Anaya is weak and has too much of a soft heart to handle what is coming. If I don't ascend the position of head, we are all in danger. The old man lifted the red, hot metal he had been hammering, dipped it into a bucket of water, and dipped it into a bucket filled with black smoke. In that case, here is something else that might meet your needs, the old man said, pulling out from the bucket of black smoke a long sword with wavy blades on both edges. N.C. Maldruid sat quietly outside his house, receiving the fresh air as it blew over the grasses and gardens around him. This was what he usually did during his free days. During the day, he would relax with his family to enjoy some peace and quiet. And during the night, he would roll out in his chariot to the farthest ends of the city to enjoy himself. The city had multiple pleasure houses that were never open during the day, and Maldruid was one of their biggest patrons. Although no one knew he was part of the council because he was always under his veil, after a long day of relaxation, Maldruid got ready to leave his house. His wife kissed him goodbye and waved as he rode off into the night in his chariot. After a long drive, Maldruid arrived in front of one of the most popular pleasure houses in the city. Maldruid, how are you doing, my friend? An old man standing in front of the house said with a smile as Maldruid got down from his vehicle. Is my favorite one around? Or is she out with someone else? Maldruid asked. No, Maldruid. You know Tatiana is exclusively for you. No other man can pay as much as you do, so you get only the best. The old man said this as he shook Maldruid's hand. Maldruid took a step forward and stopped when he saw a letter drop to his feet. He bent down to pick up the letter, then tore it open to see what it contained. Dear Maldruid, we have revealed your location to your wife, and she is currently on her way here. Do not try to escape because we have also given her a map of all the escape routes you could use, and so she has sent warrior wolves to block them. However, if you love your marriage and don't want her to catch you here, follow me. Oh, and ditch the chariot, the letter read. Maldruid turned to the roof of the pleasure house and found a shadowy figure standing on it. The figure suddenly jumped from the roof to another close by and continued running. That cursed woman! I am sure she is behind this. I'll play along with your games for now, Anaya, Maldruid said as his face contoured with anger. Is anything wrong, Maldruid? The old man asked. Maldruid, completely ignoring the old man, ran off in the direction the shadowy figure went. He continued running as fast as he could with his werewolf abilities, and soon he caught up with the dark figure. The person jumped off the roof and into a dark alley, and Maldruid followed him in. Stating face to face with the person, he asked, I know it is you, Anaya. What do you want from me? The person remained quiet for a moment, then pulled off his mask. You are the beta wolf who was standing behind Anaya at the meeting, Maldruid said. Gregory is the name. Old man. Anaya has sent me to ask for your assistance in finding the criminal who murdered Marvin and tried to murder her, Gregory said. There is no way I am helping that ingrate. Besides, I thought she would have marked me as the culprit by now since I've been against her since she became head, Maldruid said. On the contrary, she thinks really highly of you and has concluded that you wouldn't be able to commit such a crime, even though you are nothing but a disgusting old man, Gregory said with a blank stare. Watch your mouth, boy. I may not be head of the council, but I can still have you killed if I want to. Maldruid said it angrily. Right. Are you going to help or not? I need to know if I have to proceed with the blackmailing or keep it aside. Gregory said. Be blackmailing? Maldruid asked, sweat rolling down his face as a look of shock grew on it. Yes. We have transaction records, letters, and witnesses who would testify against you before the council. This will not only ruin your marriage, but will send you down to the bottom of society's hierarchy, and you would have to eat and drink from the gutters. It is your choice. You want all this to get out, or do you want to help Lady Anaya? Gregory explained. Still carrying a blank expression on his face, Maldruid tightened his fist and clenched his teeth in anger. He then let out a sigh and said, Fine, what is her plan? Good. She requires you to send letters to the rest of the members of the council, saying these exact words, fire black soaring through the sky, unbreakable cursed steel, aiming for the heart. Nice choice. After these letters are delivered, some might reply to you asking what you are talking about or insulting you. But one will ask you for a meeting, that is our culprit, Gregory explained. And what if the culprit doesn't buy your little scheme and refuses to reply? Maldruid asked. In the words of Lady Anaya herself, let's hope she is not that foolish, Gregory said. Wait, she? Maldruid asked, surprised. The truth is that Lady Anaya already knows the culprit. All that is left is getting proof. Oh, and don't worry, your wife isn't on her way. That was just a bluff, Gregory said, then jumped back onto the roof and ran off. That woman is crazy, Maldruid said, then turned around to leave.